Japanese animation, a once niche and nerdy fascination, is now mainstream. Attack on Titan, Pokémon, Spirited Away, One Piece, Death Note, Cardcaptor Sakura, Sailor Moon. Even the normiest of normies is bound to have seen at least one episode of anime dubbed or subtitled in their language. Anime has become a significant part of English-speaking internet culture. A number of memes simply wouldn't exist without it. And if you're in the mood to watch anime, there are hundreds of subbed and dubbed series to choose from on streaming sites like Netflix and Hulu, and even more to choose from on anime-exclusive streaming sites like Retro Crush, High Dive, and the nearly monopolistic behemoth that is Sonimation Roll. Most of the big companies who bring us our localized anime today are based in North America, but until the 1980s, there was hardly any translated anime in North America, and hardly any non-Japanese speaking fans either. So how did it come to pass that most of the biggest producers of localized anime and manga today are located in the US? There are many reasons for this, but one of the main drivers of the rise of localized anime, manga, games, and light novels in North America was, and is, the fans. In this video, I'm going to trace the role that fans played and continue to play in bringing anime and manga to regions outside of Japan.
Es wird sich rausstellen, wer hier fies ist. Du, Ray! Ich habe es nicht richtig gehört. Wer ist fies? Du, Ray!
Eppure le ho detto e ripetuto che avrebbe dovuto chiamare ogni ora.
While each region of the world has had its own trajectory with their localized Japanese media industries, I will be focusing on how the anime and manga localization industry grew in North America. And not just because I'm a self-centered American who thinks the world revolves around her, but also because this is the region that I personally am most connected to and can therefore represent properly. Also, the way things stand today, most anime is localized into multiple languages through US-based companies. For better or worse, North American corporations continue to play a key role in bringing anime to regions all over the world. I'm going to show you what it's like to work in the localization industry today, with survey data and testimonies from over 150 people who work in anime, manga, game, and light novel localization. I'm also going to show you how vital fans have been in this process, how fans built the industry, work in the industry, and sustain the industry, and how it's up to the fans, from your casual viewer to your anime journalists and influencers, to localizers and hardcore superfans alike, to make the industry bigger and better for everyone.
Okay, the first was Alakazam the Great, and that was around 1961 in a local movie theater. It was a redubbed release of Tezuka's Sayuki movie based on a Journey to the West story. And, you know, just incredible stuff with the monkey character and all the demons, and visually stunning, and just totally impressed me. I had no idea that this was Asian. I quickly caught on to the fact that the story was Asian, but not that it was made in Japan until much, much later. And then the first one that I actually identified as anime was Space Battleship Yamato in 1977. I saw some of it on a monitor at a store in Japantown in San Francisco. And that really caught my attention.
Depending on how you define animation, Japan's first anime was created as early as the early 1900s. And maybe there were a few Japanese Americans and Nikkei who had seen some of these very early animations and were fans of them. Some of the earliest localized anime in North America were Astro Boy, Gigantor, and 8-Man, dubbed in English and aired on TV, but most fans of these shows likely did not know that any of these shows were Japanese. The history of widespread anime fandom in the US did not begin until the 1980s, with the rise of VHS, early fanzines, and tabletop RPG and sci-fi nerds spreading the gospel.
Hey, I saw this rad cartoon from Japan last week. Brought through VHS if you want to watch it.
Oh?
What's it about?
This horny Japanese teenager wins a game of space tag by stealing an alien's bikini top.
What the
Now that people had the ability to own copies of anime and show them at will, new fans could watch anime at friends' houses and at anime clubs on college campuses. And some fans could even translate these anime and put their own English subtitles on them so the non-Japanese speaking anime fans could understand them.
Kalanimage Alpha, UC Berkeley's anime club, which, by the way, was the first college or university anime club in America. They're still around, and they started out, and in the spring, I think it was '89, and then fall of '89, MIT's club came into being, and from what I've heard, some of the early members of that were graduates from UC Berkeley. And then, of course, clubs started to spread across the country like wildfire.
This is when the practice of fan subbing began. All the way up until the early 90s, fan-subbed anime were mostly shown at anime clubs. They were not copied and widely distributed. Fan subs had two slogans: for fans, by fans, and not for sale or rent. Commercial subs of some anime were available at this time, but they were hard to come by, and they were also very expensive, about $35 for 1 to 2 episodes on VHS. That's about $80 in today's money. You could buy VHSs or laserdiscs of anime in Japanese without subtitles, but this was before online shopping was a thing, so you'd either have to physically go to Japan or to one of only 3 Japantowns in the US to buy or rent VHS of anime in Japanese. And let me say this again for emphasis, with no English subtitles. Another way that North American anime fans of the 80s and early 90s got their fix was through local Asian TV stations, if they were lucky enough to have them. I have first-hand experience with this since I lived in the San Jose Bay Area where Fuji TV was available to me. I was able to watch Iron Chef and some other Japanese dorama and anime without English subs, and I did just that, even though I couldn't understand a word of Japanese at the time. In addition to anime clubs, the first anime cons in the US began happening in the early 80s with the Dallas Fantasy Fair and Yamato Con. These early cons were lightly attended, mostly by male nerds of college age and older.
Right. It was 1983. YamatoCon, which was a small Robotech convention in Dallas. I think the next one was A-Con in 1990, which was also in Dallas and still is in that area. And then, of course, the big monster was AnimeCon 1991 in San Jose, which later moved down to Southern California and changed its name to Anime Expo.
Before the 1990s, aside from the very small population of mostly male, mostly college-age and older anime fans, the general US public did not know anime existed. Japan was perceived as this scary, weird, technologically backwards country, with samurai running around and teens committing seppuku over bad test scores. But in 1995, we saw a turning point in anime in the US. This can be attributed to 2 things: the internet and Sailor Moon.
Hello, my name is Erica Friedman, and the anime that changed my life was Sailor Moon. When I first watched Sailor Moon, I noticed patterns in the language that I could understand, and I wanted to learn more. I taught myself Japanese, which means I'm still learning and I'm better at reading than I am at listening, but hey, we're getting there. So Sailor Moon helped me learn Japanese. Sailor Moon inspired me to write fan fiction, so it taught me how to write fiction. And then it inspired nonfiction when I created my blog Okazu to tell other people about it and other great queer anime manga. It inspired me to bring more Yuri manga over, and so I started a publishing company. And then it inspired me to create a convention so that other people could get together and talk about great series like Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon inspired me to travel the world to speak publicly about Yuri. Sailor Moon inspired me to write a book about the history of Yuri. Sailor Moon changed my life in a million wonderful ways, and I'm so very thankful.
Sailor Moon! She took Japan by storm, and now she's coming here.
In 1995, I started seeing commercials for this weird cartoon about a team of girls who were superheroes. It looked silly and babyish, and I couldn't imagine my jaded teenage self watching it. But one afternoon in January of 1996, my brother suggested we hate watch an episode. And it was the episode from the Nephrite arc of season 1, where Nephrite enchanted this guy who worked at a park, and all of the animals went crazy. And Ami was friends with the guy and didn't know what was wrong with him. And so Ami, or Amy actually, transformed into Sailor Mercury, and then Serena and Ray, who was on a date with Darien at the time, transformed into Sailor Moon and Sailor Mars, and they broke the curse after spinning around naked and shooting magical attacks at them, and they all saved the day. And when I saw my first episode of Sailor Moon, I thought it was so stupid. The animation style was weird, the plot didn't make sense, and the way the girls spun around naked with all those sparkly colors to attack and transform was just so... I didn't even know what to make of it. I didn't know it at the time, but I had just watched my first episode of anime, and this was how many people who became otaku between the years 1995 and 2010 were first exposed to anime. It was dubbed into English and aired on TV, often at ungodly hours. Japanese names were changed to Western ones, episodes were censored for runtime or content, and entire episodes were cut. One of the most extreme and oft-cited examples of this was Robotech, an English dub of Macross that was so heavily modified it might as well have been a completely different show. I still liked it though. But in spite of Sailor Moon's heavy-handed censorship, episode deletion, and westernization, after watching a few more episodes, ironically so that we could mock them, I couldn't deny it anymore. I was in love. I religiously watched and recorded every DIC dubbed episode of Sailor Moon, and I shared these VHS tapes with my friends one by one until almost each one of them was also hooked.
Oh, here! I recorded that Japanese cartoon I was telling you about. Oh, cool! Wait, what's it about again?
A 14-year-old girl who loves to eat and cries all the time, spins around naked and kills aliens with her tiara.
What the
My best friend's dad, who made frequent business trips to Japan, returned one day with some merch, including t-shirts, a Sailor Moon lunchbox with these cute little chopsticks. Oh my god, look at how small and pink they are. A CD of all of the songs from the DIC dub, and the best thing of all, a VHS tape with 2 episodes from the brand spanking new season, Sailor Moon Supers, in Japanese, without subtitles. My friends and I listened to the DIC songs on repeat, drew fan art, and watched those 2 episodes of Japanese Sailor Moon over and over again, even though we didn't understand much Japanese beyond konnichiwa. For me, 1996 was the year of Sailor Moon. I spent many of my waking hours watching it, thinking about it, and talking about it, but my little baby otaku heart was broken when Sailor Moon was cancelled later that year in the US. This was an injustice. Since they stopped dubbing the show mid-season, there were so many plot issues left unresolved. Darien and Serena were still broken up, the Black Moon baddies were still wreaking havoc on Tokyo, and we still didn't know who the hell Rini was. And worst of all, this new obsession that I had found and shared with my friend group had suddenly hit a wall. But thankfully for us, and for the thousands of other new But thankfully for us and the thousands of other new Sailor Moon fans in North America with freshly broken hearts, we now had the internet. Sailor Moon fans started a campaign called Save Our Sailors, or SOS, to get Sailor Moon back on the air. In the meantime, my friends and I discovered our local Japanese video rental store, where we could rent all the episodes on VHS in Japanese without subtitles. Through the internet, we also discovered fan pages and mailing lists, which were sort of the social media of the mid-90s. We discovered the existence of fan subs, which by the mid-90s had turned into a rapidly growing network of groups all over the US and other countries who translated anime, subtitled it in their respective languages, and sent VHS copies out to anyone in exchange for just enough money to cover the cost of a blank VHS and shipping. Now, let's not sugarcoat this. Fan subs were and are illegal. And anime fans were well aware of this fact. Most VHSs came with the iconic phrases, "for fans, by fans," and "not for sale or rent." If a series were picked up for commercial release, distribution of the fan sub ceased immediately, and fans were encouraged to destroy any copies that they might still have of the fan sub. While commercially released anime was definitely still a thing, and it too was a growing industry, due to the small selection and extremely high prices of officially translated anime, most otaku of the mid to late 90s relied on fan subs to get their fix.
My otaku twin sister is filmed before a live studio audience.
She's a normal teen, but her twins is obscenely obsessed with anime shows. She is
Tammy and her twin sisters happy as can be, but when Tammy gets about anime, she drives her sister crazy with her costumes and her fanfics and her singing in Japanese. It's like Tammy has an anime disease.
When will Tara ever get a moment's peace?
Okay, so I'm writing the section on Seneca Falls and the Kingdom of Hawaii, and then Brandon is handling the part with the Women's Temperance Union. Hang on a second. What?
Please, can I use the phone? It's an emergency. I think something's wrong with my Fushigi Yugi fan sub.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway. Yeah, I'll call you back.
Arigato!
Whatever.
Man, what will Clamp think up next? Oh. Hello?
Konnichiwa! Is this Kase Shoujo?
That is my AOL screen name, yes.
Kakoi! Anyway, I just watched volume 5 of your Fushigi Yugi fan sub today.
Wait, how did you get this number?
It was on your meshi.
On my rice? Oh, you mean Meishi, business card.
Yeah, you were handing them out at Anime Expo last summer with your fan sub group, Mars Fan Subs?
Right? Why did I put my phone number on my cards?
Anyway, I just had a question about Toski's 5th line in episode 19. Now, he said bakayaro, which I remember you translated in episode 16 as you idiot, but in the subs for episode 19 you translated it as dumb shit. I'm just wondering, which is the correct translation of bakayaro?
They're synonyms. They're both correct.
No, they're not. Does bakayaro mean you idiot or dumb shit? Toski's my favorite character. I just have to know.
I'm going to hang up now.
No, wait. I've been making a running tally of all of the times that Toski swears, and I just want it to be as accurate as possible.
You do realize Japanese doesn't exactly have the same set of swear words we have, right?
Wrong. I've seen plenty of swearing in your translations.
Well, yeah, but that's just because I felt that if the characters were originally speaking English, they would have used—
It's cool, everyone makes mistakes. I'll just assume that they're both dumb shit, and then I'll put another tally in the shit column. Sayonara!
But— Baka no.
私のこの素晴らしい芸術がわからぬとは。
なんと悲しい少年であることか。この顔の熊取り、愛は策略、黒は忠義そしてそれを彩る華やかな金との調和。
どうも、玉褒めなら外。
何？
Since Sailor Moon was commercially released by the time I got into it, I couldn't get my hands on any fan subs, so Fushigi Yugi was the first anime that I saw fan subbed. I was starting to learn some Japanese by then, just the important stuff like hiragana, katakana, and all the words for penis, and I noticed some discrepancies in how the profanity was translated in the fan subs. So I did indeed send a letter to Tomodachi Anime, the group that was fan subbing it, asking them point-by-point questions about the profanity. Yes, I was that cringe. To be fair, the translation quality in fan subs was quite spotty. The translators ranged from Japanese Americans and Nikkei who were fluent in Japanese and English to people who took maybe 1 to 2 years of high school or college Japanese. Again, I have to give credit to the Japanese Americans and Nikkei who provided the translations for some of those early fan subs. Japanese language classes weren't that common in the US, and internet dictionaries weren't exactly a thing either. So learning the language and looking up words was difficult and time-consuming. And the icing on the cake, most fan sub translators had to translate by ear, and they weren't exactly working from the best audio quality. And if you've watched any of my videos about entertainment translation on this channel, you'll know that it takes more than an understanding of Japanese to make a good English translation of it. Translation itself is a craft that takes years of practice and study to hone properly. Most early fan sub translators were, to put it charitably, well-meaning and enthusiastic, but incredibly inconsistent amateurs. The result was a mix of perfectly translated lines with mistranslated lines, and the fans had no way of telling which was which. Also, the dialogue in many older fan subs was rather stilted. It sounded like a translation of Japanese rather than natural-sounding English. Since many of these translators were inexperienced and not well-versed in translation theory, they opted to leave a lot of the Japanese words in Japanese. In translation theory, we call this foreignization. That is, intentionally making the translation of something sound foreign, so that the reader or viewer is cognizant of the fact that they're consuming entertainment that's not in their native language. It reminds me a little bit of Bertolt Brecht's theory of dialectical theater, in which the viewer is intentionally distanced from the work of art to remind them that they're watching a play.
You're watching a video essay. I'm editing it right now. I haven't had a proper day off in over a month. I am so tired.
For better or worse, the fan subs of the 90s and early zeros normalized this kind of foreignized translation in fan subs. And many otaku of this era, myself included, came to love and appreciate this style. It went with the niche nature of anime fandom in the 90s. We were part of a secret society, and we had our own culture and language. The existence of multiple fan subgroups meant that some anime got multiple translations. This meant the fans could compare one fan sub to another, see where they were different, and get even more insights to the characters, the stories, and to the Japanese language. Fan subs between 1995 and 2005 were by no means perfect, but we weren't expecting perfection. We were just excited to get our hands on all of the anime that we could. Meanwhile, manga fandom was also taking off. When you watched every available episode in your favorite anime series and you weren't ready for it to be over yet, you turned to the manga. Commercially released manga translated into English were still rather rare at the time and difficult to come by. You could not simply walk into a Barnes & Noble and go to the manga section to buy manga like you can today, but commercially released manga did exist, and as anime rose in popularity, so too did manga. Scanlations weren't much of a thing in the 90s, but fans did post their own translations of their favorite manga in transcript form on their websites. I remember getting my Fushigi Yugi withdrawal symptoms treated many a time at Tatsuki no Miko's page, and once I started learning Japanese, I put some of my own very badly translated manga transcripts of Watase Sensei's newest series, Ayashi no Seres, up on my own webpage as well. I remember the first anime that I translated for a fan sub was Ayashi no Seres. It ran in Japan the year that I was there as an exchange student at 1 a.m. And I asked my first host dad to record it on VHS for me. And I took those VHS recordings and I translated them into transcript form. And then I sent those translated transcripts as well as a copy of the VHS over to a fan sub group so they could make a fan sub of it. And the first 4 episodes of Ayashi no Seres were supposed to be premiered at Anime Expo 2000 using the fan sub with my translations. And I was so excited about that. But then Ayashi no Seres was picked up for commercial release, and that fan sub never saw the light of day. Probably for the best. My story is not unique. Sailor Moon's arrival on North American TVs in 1995 triggered a huge shift in anime fandom in the US. In our interview, Giles noted that after Sailor Moon, the demographics at anime cons changed abruptly, from men of college age and older to include girls, young women, and their mothers. Because mothers weren't too keen on the idea of sending their daughters to gatherings of mostly men. But these mothers also got hooked on Sailor Moon, as too did the men. Between the rise of the internet and the inclusion of non-men in the fandom, anime popularity in the US exploded in the mid to late 90s. It was still a niche fandom, and it was still quite small. Anime was by no means mainstream, but it was gaining steam. Oh my god, it took me like 2 hours to get this set and my costume and makeup on, and now I'm maybe done? If the microphone worked, oh god.
My first would have been Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z on Cartoon Network, but they were so accessible compared to everything else that I kind of consider them a separate thing entirely. It wasn't until many years later when I was staying up until 1 in the morning on school nights to watch Full Metal Alchemist and often falling asleep halfway through a philosophical monologue in Ghost in the Shell that I think I could say that I was really into anime. For a number of years afterwards, anime was my comfort media. It's what I would have on when eating, before going to bed, and occasionally binging the really good shows I came across. I don't know that I have a specific instance where a show, changed my life or anything, but I do have one moment that stands out as special. One morning, I woke up with a tune in my head, something short, vague, I couldn't quite place it, but accompanying that tune was this deep feeling of comfort or happiness. It took me all day to figure out what it was, but it was from a show I had watched recently, one of those moments where they skip the ending animation sequence and the outro music plays behind an important closing scene. And that sort of thing just never happens to me with other forms of media.
The turn of the century saw another shift in how anime fans got their fix. Everything went digital. Fan subs became digisubs. VCRs were replaced with BitTorrent and YouTube. With the founding of Napster in 1999, the internet was quickly becoming a place where people could share media with each other easily, efficiently, and in mass quantities. Why am I talking about Napster, you might ask? Because it marked a paradigm shift in how everyone got their entertainment. Before the year 2000, if you wanted to listen to music, you either had to buy or borrow it on CD, cassette tape, or vinyl, or you had to turn on MTV or the radio and hope that the particular song you were wanting to listen to was playing. But when Napster came around in 1999, as long as you had a home computer and an internet connection to, you suddenly had access to just about any song you could possibly want, for free. My brother and I enjoyed many an MP3 from an eclectic range of artists, from Bach to Metallica to Hamasaki Aimi to Rammstein to that one song that everybody thought was a Rammstein song because it got mislabeled as a Rammstein song, but it wasn't actually a Rammstein song, but we all loved it anyway. Es ist nicht leicht, ein Gott zu sein. Napster was basically our gargantuan collaborative digital mixtape. Anyone could upload any song to Napster and anyone could download any song. It was like Spotify, except very, very illegal. And although Napster was lawsuited out of existence in the year 2001, the concept of peer-to-peer file sharing expanded and lingered on via BitTorrent. Using torrenting sites, people all over the world could share music, movies, TV shows, and anime. Yes, this Napster sidebar did have a point. Though this was before social media as we know it, the internet was still a place where anime fans could connect, share fanfics and fan art, evangelize about their favorite anime and manga, and share fan subs. Scanlations also rose to prominence in the early aughts. For the 5% of my audience who aren't weebs, these are fan-made, translated, and lettered manga digitally posted on the internet. And here's one I did of Chibi Maruko-chan on my Angel Fire page. Isn't she beautiful? While, like Napster, fansubbing and scanlating were still technically very much illegal, the easy accessibility of anime and manga in these forms helped transform anime and manga from something that was once very underground and niche to something that most normies knew existed and could name at least one property of.
I just watched the sickest show.
What is it?
Oh, you've probably never heard of it. It's a Japanese animation about the traditional game of Go.
Oh, you mean Hikaru no Go. Yeah, I watched that anime a couple years ago. I love the OP by Dream.
But anime wasn't all about fansubs anymore. Many beloved anime and manga series that got their fandoms in the West from fansubs and fan sites were now getting commercially released. Anime like the aforementioned Fushigi Yugi and Ayashi no Seres, and also anime like Revolutionary Girl Utena, Escaflowne, and others. And this was a good thing. The original mission of For Fans by Fans fansubs was to get anime popular enough to the point that it would be commercially released in the West, where you could watch anime on TV, buy manga at Barnes & Noble, and buy Tenchi Muyo DVDs at Best Buy. Fansubs were still very much a thing, but there were just many more legal ways of watching anime in the 2000s. I would tell you more about this era, but in the early 2000s, I was busy getting my college degree and broke off my ass, so I couldn't afford to watch anime on cable, and I couldn't afford to buy commercially released English translated manga and anime. Not that I needed to either, because by then I was fluent in Japanese and I could just understand it in Japanese, so I spent most of the 2000s just rereading through my Japanese manga collection. And even though I started translating for Discotheque in 2005 when they were founded, It was mostly older anime titles and live-action films, so I still felt very disconnected from the anime fandom in that era. So I'm going to have a literal historian walk you through the rest of the 2000s.
The 2000s were a formative, but also extremely chaotic decade of high highs and low lows for the burgeoning US anime industry. For example, on one hand, anime's prominence in the West throughout the 90s brought on an anime licensing gold rush that lasted throughout most of the decade. Plus, Adult Swim started up, and even though anime wasn't necessarily its primary focus, it nonetheless became an anime powerhouse all the same, and brought several generation-defining titles like Fullmetal Alchemist, Inuyasha, Bleach, and so many more to its massive audience. But then, on the other hand, that same licensing gold rush dried up, and there were a number of closures across the US anime industry, most notably including Geneon and ADV. Furthermore, popular anime streaming block Toonami spent a lot of the decade as a shadow of its former self, before quietly ending in 2008. It would eventually come back in 2012, sure, but nobody knew that at the time. And what's more, the Toonami of 2008 was nothing like the Toonami of the late 90s and early 2000s. It was more or less just a glorified Naruto block. So basically what I'm getting at here is that, there weren't exactly massive crowds of anime fans in the street demanding Toonami's immediate revival. But in the midst of all this, for better or for worse, this was the decade where piracy leapt onto center stage, and while it absolutely wasn't an issue exclusive to the US anime industry and anime fans, we're nonetheless going to focus on this issue as it relates to them. So, what was going on? Well, the increased availability of the internet and the increasing number of anime fans naturally meant an increased amount of anime fans who were both willing and able to pirate anime. Usually, but not exclusively, with fan subs since, God, who wants to wait 50 years for the official subs, right? So yeah, why wouldn't people pirate anime during this time? After all, anime may be commercially available now, but watching a full series through official means could often be prohibitively expensive, to say nothing of how it was also a test for your patience. Like, let's say that it's the early 2000s and you want to watch... God, I don't know, you just want to watch anime. Well, without a doubt, your best bet is to watch something dubbed that's airing on Toonami, Adult Swim, or any of the other channels/programming blocks that have at least some anime. Now, the good news is that, yeah, there's plenty of anime that you can watch this way. Like, just to give you an idea about the kind of shows that were airing in the US in the early 2000s, we got shows like Gundam Wing, Cowboy Bebop, Dot Hack Sign, Cardcaptor Sakura, oh, sorry, my bad, I meant Card Captors, among plenty of others. Not to mention, a lot of the anime that aired during the 90s are either still going or are getting reruns like Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and Dragon Ball Z. Lots of great titles are on, suffice to say. But the bad news is that, well, right off the bat, you're definitely at a big disadvantage if you don't have cable or satellite TV, as the overwhelming majority of the channels/programming blocks with anime weren't available to those without it. But even if you did have cable or satellite, you still weren't without roadblocks. For one, while not every anime dub on US TV was like this, certainly many of the titles that were being marketed more toward kids were heavily altered and or censored for TV, especially when it came to stuff like LGBTQIA+ characters and themes. Furthermore, it wasn't unusual to see lots and lots of superfluous Americanizations in these dubs as well. 4Kids, of course, was prominent at the time, and they especially did this a lot. That being said, I do feel the need to emphasize the fact that edits in English language anime dubs were nothing new in the late 90s and early 2000s. It was just that more people noticed during this time because more and more people were getting into anime than ever before. And thanks largely to the dedicated efforts of anime fans from the 80s and early 90s, not to mention more access to information about anime by way of things like the internet and a steadily growing number of anime conventions, professionally distributed anime magazines, and so on, while anime still wasn't anywhere near as accessible then as it is today, anime fans in the late 90s and early 2000s still had more access to the unedited counterparts of the anime they were seeing and information about them than anime fans in previous years had. But getting back to the 2000s, maybe you're not interested in watching any of the titles whose dubs got this treatment. Because again, it wasn't all of the anime that were airing on US TV that were like this, and if you knew your way around what channels/programming blocks were airing what titles, you could easily avoid the ones that you didn't want to watch. But even so, you're still left with the issue of timing. Or to be more specific, that you were rarely able to watch anime that were airing on TV at your own pace. That was just the TV watching experience at the time. Unless you're really lucky and someone's airing a marathon, odds are that you're just gonna have to wait for the stations to air the whole series, which is usually a weeks, if not months, long process. Mostly dependent on where you're watching your anime, the timing for new episodes, and how frequent they air reruns. Either way, it's not exactly ideal, and it makes it really easy to accidentally miss episodes, especially if you jump in like halfway through a series' run. Plus, this is all acting under the assumption that you want to watch, well, whatever anime it is that just so happens to be airing. But what if you don't? What if you want to watch something that's not airing anywhere on US TV? What if you want to watch something subbed? Or what if you want to go back and watch something that maybe aired a couple of years ago but no longer is? What then? Well, you can't just stream it on the internet because streaming's not really much of a thing yet, so removing piracy from the equation, what are your options? Well, the most obvious is good old physical media, to go ahead and just get the series on VHS and DVD and just watch it that way. Let's go ahead and bust out our handy dandy Right Stuff catalog from the fall of 2003 and see how much this is gonna cost us. Well, I see. And adjusted for inflation, that's, Yeah, during these years, physical releases of anime were nothing like they are now. Series were released tape by tape or disc by disc, with one tape or one DVD having only 3 to 4 episodes, and each of those individual tapes or DVDs were full-priced and didn't all come out at once. So basically, unless you were watching something that had been out for a moment, you'd probably find yourself waiting a few months between volumes. So yeah, buying a whole series physically was very, very, very expensive and could often leave you waiting several months to get the whole series. So, okay, what else can you do then? Well, God, I mean, ideally you could just borrow the series from like, a friend or something, but let's say for argument's sake that your friend doesn't have any full series either, same reason as you don't. It's just way too expensive, and it's an expense that feels really risky if you haven't already seen the series, which you probably haven't if it didn't air on TV. So, knowing that, your next idea might be to go ahead and see what's in stock at your local video rental store, which is, probably a Blockbuster, and I mean, they'll have some anime, sure, but they're probably just gonna have stuff like, Ghibli movies, a handful of miscellaneous episodes of a popular series like Pokemon or Sailor Moon, and like, I don't know, maybe an Inuyasha movie, not a lot, suffice to say, and it's very unlikely that you're gonna find anything that hasn't aired on US TV, let alone finding it in its entirety because, remember, expensive volumized releases. Okay, so yeah, physical media's probably not gonna work out for the time being, so what are our next options? Well, you probably don't have a lot of other options, to be completely honest with you. If you're gonna go to an anime con, you could always watch whatever's playing in the video room, though there's not nearly as many cons happening in the early 2000s as there are, say, today. Plus, what if you want to do con stuff at the con? What then? Ideally, you'd prefer to watch something from the comfort of your own home, right? So taking all that into consideration, I guess your next, and probably only other option that you even might have is the Anime Network. And for those of you unfamiliar, the Anime Network was the US's first, and up until 2005, only video-on-demand channel dedicated entirely to anime. But especially in their early days, the Anime Network wasn't widely accessible. From its December 2002 launch and until April of 2003, it was only available to Comcast subscribers in the Philadelphia area. And even then, it only expanded to northern New Jersey. And although it did continue to grow more throughout 2003, it wouldn't be until 2004 that they got a linear feed and started to see much more substantial growth. But even then, it was still only carried by certain cable providers, and thus not exactly an option that everyone had. So yeah, in conclusion, by the mid-2000s, the growing number of anime fans in the West were craving cheaper, faster, and more accessible ways to watch anime. And knowing all this, it's hardly a wonder why piracy and fan subs were so prominent during this decade. Enter YouTube, which was founded in 2005, but in the summer of 2006, Ad Age called it the fastest growing website. Yeah, YouTube got extremely popular extremely fast, and early YouTube and modern YouTube are just two entirely different YouTubes. Relevant to this video is how prior to Viacom's lawsuit in 2007, YouTube usually turned a blind eye to copyrighted content on the platform. And in the case of anime, this meant that it wasn't unusual to see people upload episodes, if not just entire series, for just anyone to watch. So yeah, this is to say that the dawn of streaming, especially on a site like YouTube, which relied on user-uploaded content with little or no moderation, introduced a powerful and incomparably easier way to watch and share anime conveniently and for free. After all, for as easy as torrents and downloads were, they still weren't as simple as just streaming it on YouTube. Whether or not it was official largely didn't matter, you know, who wants to think about that when there's finally a quick, easy, affordable, and accessible way to watch anime, right? But even then, for as great as YouTube was for anime fans just trying to watch anime without plunging themselves into bankruptcy, it still wasn't quite perfect. For one, obviously YouTube didn't cater specifically to anime fans, so if you were hoping to, like, I don't know, discover new series, learn more about any given series, or even just see what series were around and available, YouTube wasn't readily equipped to do any of that. Furthermore, this was before you could upload videos that were as long as you wanted, meaning that episodes were often uploaded in 3 to 4 parts, and it was very inconvenient and disorganized. Enter Crunchyroll, a brand new anime-centric streaming site founded in response to YouTube's shortcomings. Founded in 2006, originally Crunchyroll hosted user-uploaded anime dramas, AMVs, game trailers, and more. That being said, anime was, without a doubt, the site's focus first and foremost. And unlike YouTube, Crunchyroll was designed with that in mind. So not only was the site a great place to watch anime, but it was also a great place to discover new anime, talk to others about anime, and more, letting the site get really popular really fast. But like many other sites who've grown really fast, Crunchyroll struggled to keep up with its rapidly rising bandwidth costs. In the summer of 2007, TechCrunch reported that Crunchyroll was talking to venture capitalists now. And sure enough, in March of 2008, they got about $4 million from Venrock. During that same year, they started hosting their first batch of officially authorized streams, officially authorized anime simulcasts, which most notably included Naruto Shippuden, and then, to seal the deal and confirm that they truly had left their piracy days behind them, in December of 2008, they announced that they would no longer be allowing user-uploaded content, and also removing all the remaining user-uploaded content from the site. So by 2010, Crunchyroll had become a large and fully fledged member of the US anime industry. Officially authorized simulcasts and streaming were becoming the norm, even outside of Crunchyroll, which made anime more accessible than it had ever been before, even, well, if not especially, from official sources, as they were now becoming increasingly affordable, and episodes were no longer being released so slowly. And while the many recent closures across the US anime industry really highlighted just how shaky its foundation really was, by 2010, there were a lot of reasons to feel optimistic about its future again. After all, the stage was fully set for anime to get bigger than ever.
The first anime I got into was Attack on Titan. I had watched some anime before AOT, but it was the first one I truly fell in love with. I caught the series in like 2014, 2015 via Netflix. The anime that has touched me the most would probably be Death Note. I absolutely adore the cat and mouse dynamic between Light and L, and it was one of the first pieces of media that I didn't just engage with as simple entertainment, but as something to analyze and discuss with others. So in that regard, it was a major factor into my media literacy skills, which is something that I'll always be grateful for.
Oh, before I start, this is really bugging me, so I'm going to point it out because people are probably going to comment about it. This line here in Anya's name, it's supposed to be vertical, not horizontal, but I thought the design on the t-shirt was cute, so I bought it anyway. The 2010s was a decade in which anime and manga really joined the mainstream. In addition to Crunchyroll, we had Funimation and HiDive for streaming current seasonal anime. These sites also have catalogs of older anime available to stream. These sites also have catalogs of older anime available to stream, and there are other streaming sites like Retro Crush where you can catch up on some vintage anime that you might have missed back in the day. And in this decade, anime was no longer confined to anime-specific streaming sites or channels either. You could stream plenty of anime, both current and old, on Netflix and Hulu. This meant you didn't have to be an otaku actively seeking out anime to become a fan of a series. You could just be some normie scrolling your recommendeds on Netflix and wind up being a fan of Death Note. Meanwhile, in print media, we saw the rise of companies like Yen Press, Seven Seas, and J Novel Club, who published more and more manga and light novel series. While not every single current running manga series is published in English today, there are apps with some simulpub titles. Between the years 2019 and 2022, manga sales quadrupled. You can walk into any Barnes & Noble today and go to the manga section and buy a number of English translated manga. There's even a light novel section now. You can have a wide variety of merch delivered to your door, and there are over 300 cons all over the Americas to attend. You can easily find anime fans on social media, but chances are any normie you pass on the street has seen at least one anime. It really clicked for me just how mainstream and how current anime had become when I was having a conversation with somebody at my improv theater in the year 2013. It came up in conversation that we both liked anime, and she asked me, in a tone that was 100% casual, "So, what are your favorite shows this season?" There are so many things about that sentence that blew my mind. One, a random person I met in the wild liked anime. Back in the 90s, this was rare. Two, her casual tone. Again, back in the 90s, if you met another anime fan, you were both so excited to have found kin that you just go crazy and wild with excitement. And three, she was watching anime by season. This concept was just completely foreign to fans of the 90s. And even in the zeros to an extent. Like it or not, anime now is just about as mainstream as they come, and manga isn't that far behind. It's readily available on mainstream streaming sites like Netflix and Hulu, and there's a whole genre of YouTube for anime and manga, with many AniTubers and the millions of subs. You've got VTubers and cosplayers on Twitch, manga and anime TikTokers, and well-established big AniTubers like Gigguk, Mother's Basement, and Glass Reflection, as well as up-and-coming channels like Colleen's Manga Rex, Cartoon Cypher, and Attack on Titty?
Titties and boobies and magical milkers. Ohayo gozaimasu! It's your girl, Bubiko Senpai, and welcome back to Attack on Titty, AniTube's first show devoted exclusively to scouting out all of anime's greatest tits. You might say it's a parody. Last week, we looked back on the Hooter heaven that is Konosuba. Hello, darkness, my old friend. And the week before was Danmachi, Hestia, the bestia of the breastias. And today, I'd like to take another look into recent anime history with the days of yore. I mean, can we take a moment to appreciate the sheer artistry and subtlety of that boob window? The straps on that iconic black dress are giving me major Shibari vibes, and I am here for it! But as my loyal fans will know, here on Attack on Titty, it's not just about the bust. Okay, it's mostly about the bust. But I'm featuring Yor today, because not only is she sexy as all she's a total sweetheart who loves her fake daughter Anya, has adorable will they won't they vibes with Lloyd, and is just so adorable when she's assassinating people. And that billowing off the shoulder red sweater dress is working. Well, that's all we got for this week. Come back next week to see who I feature next. I welcome your suggestions. If you want to stay abreast of the best breasts anime has to offer, give your girl Bubiko Senpai a sub. Even though I'm a sub. I'm almost at 1,000 subs, by the way, so if you could just help a girl out. Monetization, please. Also, follow me on TikTok and Twitch at Bubiko Senpai. Okay, I won't milk this any longer. Ta-ta! Danmachi Food Wars Konosuba.
I've never heard of her.
So, the first anime that I remember watching just at all was really anything that I could find on TV in the late 90s and early 2000s. You know, Sailor Moon, Cardcaptors, and Pokemon, those were my first great loves. But then in 2005, a friend of mine showed me fan-subbed episodes of One Piece that her older brother had burned onto a disc. Because remember, this was 2005. This was back when 4Kids had the rights to One Piece. So there was an entire galaxy of differences between the dubbed and subbed versions of One Piece. So yeah, needless to say, life has not been the same for me since, and from there I got super into One Piece, which led to me getting super into watching the subbed versions of other anime that I had watched before on TV, and also anime that hadn't even aired on US TV to begin with. And in these early days, I mostly watched anime through a combination of the aforementioned burnt discs, Crunchyroll, which was very new at the time, and also YouTube during the years where it was a copyright wasteland. You know, back when anime episodes were divided into 3 parts and every now and again you'd have to watch a third of an episode with like Spanish or French subtitles because that was just all that was available.
This video was originally going to be about what it's like to work in the anime and manga localization industry. So why did I spend the last 45 minutes giving you a history lesson? Because I'm a masochist. It was because I realized a lot of the points that I was going to cover needed context. In order to give a nuanced and holistic look about how the industry works today and why it works that way, I had to walk you through the history of how it came into being. The people who work in the localization industry today, most of us were those early anime fans of the 90s and zeros. We came from an era when anime was not only super niche and really hard to come by, we were the ones who made anime popular. People who work in anime, manga, and light novel localization today were the super fans of the 90s and the aughts who loved anime and manga so much that the limited supply we had at the time would not satisfy us. We were the ones who learned Japanese, spent years in Japan, and found our own ways to not only get our anime fix, but to make it so others could get that fix too. And if I'm sounding pompous or self-congratulatory here, that's completely intentional. I'm proud that I taught myself Japanese through hours and hours of obsessive poring over Fushigi Yugi song lyrics, episodes of Raw Sailor Stars in Japanese without subtitles, and Ayashi no Seres manga that I could read but not understand. I'm proud that I dragged my introverted, socially anxious ass all the way to Japan so that I could go to high school there and learn the language and culture firsthand. I'm proud that my cringy web pages on GeoCities and Angelfire helped popularize so many of my beloved series. I'm proud that through sheer grit, I turned my passion for anime and manga into a career that sustained me for almost 20 years. And I'm proud for the role I continue to play in bringing new game, manga, and light novel series to people who wouldn't be able to understand them without my translations. If you take one thing away from the first section of this video, it's this. Anime in North America has always been, and still is, for fans by fans. Everyone who works in the localization industry today is a fan, and the localization industry as it is today would not exist without the fans who built it. All anime fans, whether we work in the industry or not, want to make anime in North America and the rest of the world as good as it can possibly be. But there are some challenges to working in the localization industry, and the quality of localized anime is only as good as its workers and how they're treated.
I wanted to talk about the first anime that I watched by myself on purpose because it was anime, since I think that had the biggest impact on me. Of course, I watched some anime when I was a kid, mostly Pokemon and Sailor Moon, and friends got me to watch Spirited Away and Advent Children, if that counts as an anime, and Death Note in high school. But finding Code Geass was really what got me interested. So back in the day when I spent time on DeviantArt, I came across the fan art of Code Geass. This was just one fan art, while desperately needing a break from real life. And I used what I had learned from my friends to find it in 3-part segments on YouTube when there was still that 10-minute limit on video length. So this was 2008. I started episode 1 while I was working on my college application, senior year, and I finished the series right around graduation. So I think I'm the world's slowest anime watcher, but I don't think I would have made it through senior high school, through senior year without it and its soundtrack.
Hi there, I'm Sarah. It's so awkward. Hi there, I'm Sarah, a freelance Japanese to English entertainment translator, and this is a day in my life. Translating anime and manga has been my dream job ever since I was 16 in 1998. But in the late 90s and in most of the aughts, there wasn't a clear path for fans who wanted to turn pro. I remember cold emailing the small handful of companies that existed back then, and I heard back from one of them and they said that they would put my resume on file. I think we all know how that turned out.
I translated for Discotheque Media as more of a sideline while I went to college and grad school. I also made my living teaching dance, choreographing musicals, tutoring, and odds and ends like helping people move and altering their clothes. In 2013, I started getting more of my income from translating. I started working freelance for an agency that gave me work in game, anime, and TV docuseries translations. I freelanced for Crunchyroll for a few years, and in 2022, I switched over to mostly light novels and manga, but I still translate games now and then.
And breakfast! I am a millennial, so I've got avocado toast, and it is summer, and peaches are in season, and I love peaches. And grapes are also in season, so I got some peaches and grapes on the side. I'm eating my hair. So part of the reason why I started making YouTube videos in 2016 about being a freelance Japanese to English entertainment translator was because I felt isolated. I didn't know anybody else who had my job, and I wanted to be able to talk shop and hopefully meet others like me. And now, thanks to Twitter, Discord, and this channel, I'm connected to hundreds of other people in localization. So instead of talking about just my experiences as a freelance Japanese to English entertainment translator, today I'm going to be sharing our collective experience with you. That is so good.
This is where I would walk you through my morning skincare routine, but it's pretty basic and I would probably just get a lot of comments making fun of me for not knowing how to apply makeup properly, so enjoy the B-roll while I go over the survey in voiceover.
I reached out privately to my Twitter mutuals who work in localization and to a couple Discord servers for localizers, and 152 people anonymously filled out my survey of 44 questions. For my first question, I asked, how long have you been in the localization industry professionally? 44% of the participants responded 1 to 3 years, and 27% responded 4 to 6 years. This means that almost 3/4 of the respondents are relatively new to the industry at 6 years or less. This could be for a number of reasons. Maybe people don't last in the industry more than 6 years, or industry veterans are less likely to hang out on Twitter or Discord. But I think the most likely reason is that, as I showed in the first section of this video, the industry has boomed in the past 5 years. When an industry is as young as anime-manga localization, it logically follows that the majority of its workers haven't been in it for more than 5 years. 94% of the respondents have been a fan of Japanese entertainment for 11 years or more. A little over 82% of the respondents are regular consumers of anime and manga, 90% are regular consumers of games, a quarter of the respondents are regular consumers of light novels, and about 50% of us regularly watch Japanese film, TV, and online entertainment like YouTube. So yeah, we're weebs. The overwhelming majority of us, 88%, have 3 or more years of post-high school education. The majority of the respondents also work in more than one field of localization, in anime and games, or games and manga, or manga light novels and games in my case. Some people work in all the fields. 80% of the respondents are translators and 48% are editors. Again, there's overlap. Many people who translate also edit. 71% of the respondents work freelance only, 15% have exclusively in-house positions, and 15% are both in-house and freelance. This means only 30% of us have in-house positions. Whether freelance or not, the vast majority of us work from home. This is one perk of the job that a lot of us love. Here's what some of my survey respondents said.
I enjoy having no commute and making my own hours.
I love that I make my own hours, and I love that I can spend time at home with my husband and pets. Flexibility, working from home, doing what I love. What else would I want?
I like the freedom of freelance work and being able to work in a creative field.
When I asked if they have translated for unofficial fan translations like scanlations and fan subs, 2/3 of the localizers answered yes. And remember this stat every time somebody tries to claim that fan translators are somehow better than the pros. It's a non-existent comparison. Most of us were fan translators. For some demographics, a little over 50% of us are non-men, and almost 50% of us are queer. I'm not at all surprised by this statistic, actually, since it seems like most of my loc-umfies on Twitter are queer, but it was just neat to see it all in the data. Some of my respondents also mentioned being grateful to work in such a queer-friendly industry. Also, about 1/3 of the respondents are neurodivergent. Gee, I wonder why neurodivergent people would be attracted to a career where you get to stay home, work in a creative industry, and perform a task that requires your brain to run a bunch of different programs at once. So to recap, the majority of the people who translate, edit, letter, and do subtitles and captions for your favorite anime, manga, games, and light novels are freelance, work from home, college-educated, super otaku.
Okay, let me take you on a tour of my home office. Ta-da! Okay, it might not look all that cool, but comfort and cat accessibility are really important to me. Kitty! So I used to work at a proper desk with a proper desktop computer, but my long spindly limbs do not like to dangle. They like to be elevated, so I now use a laptop on a couch. I have a very advanced pillow system. I've got quite a few strategically stacked pillows for lower back support, very important. Also to support the lower back, I have a pillow under, which elevates my knees and takes pressure off my back. So when I tell people about my setup and show people how I work, they're like, oh, that's so uncomfortable and so bad for your back. It's like, no, this is actually extremely comfortable and extremely good for my back. If I were to sit up straight at a desk, I would slouch, I would hurt my back and my shoulders and my neck, and then my limbs would be all numb. Also, elephant in the room, but let me just get ahead of the comments. Yes, I am aware that my apartment is messy. My husband is disabled, and I've been spending every free moment of the last 2 months working on this video, so keeping my apartment looking like a magazine cover is not exactly my top priority right now. Or ever, really. Life's too short for that.
Also, most of those bottles are syrup, not alcohol. Also, yes, I have a big bruise on my right arm. I bruise very easily, so I have no idea how I got it. It doesn't hurt, it's not a big deal, please don't jump to conclusions. There, does that cover everything? Well, if it doesn't, whatever. I won't read your comment anyway.
But I will show you some tidier, more professional-looking workspaces of fellow localizers in the industry while I talk about our typical workday and voiceover.
As for how the typical workday goes, that varies from person to person, but we set our own hours. As long as our projects get done by the deadlines, we're good. This is especially helpful for those of us who are disabled, neurodivergent, or chronically ill. We can do extra work on our good days and work less or take a day off when we don't have the spoons.
I don't want to put a percentage on how many days or hours I'm out of commission, but it's at the point where if I were in a normal 9-to-5 job, I would be considered a burden, even if they do have paid sick leave and sick days. And that's like an added pressure on me where I'd be letting people down or people would look at me funny for never being at work. It's been a godsend, actually, to shift into this line of work during the pandemic. I feel really lucky that I'm not forced into going into a place of work that makes me feel uncomfortable.
For me, a normal work routine actually works rather well, so I spend Monday through Thursday translating manga and light novels. I keep Fridays and Sundays open for game work, but if I don't get any game work in those days, I spend those days doing chores, running errands, and making YouTube videos. Saturdays, I take off, and that's a rule that I really try to keep. I'm a big liar. As many of the localizers I interviewed can attest, it's really easy to get burnt out and exhausted and tired if you don't take at least one day off a week to rest and recharge. Also, since this job is a creative and an artistic one, your brain has to be in the right mood to work.
If you'll indulge me on another time-traveling tangent, the year is 2003. On Season 3, Episode 7 of The Bernie Mac Show, the titular character, may he rest in peace, talks us through his workday routine writing new material for his stand-up comedy.
First, I start by setting up a little reward system for myself. Today's sandwich is ham and cheese. And I follow that up with an inspirational movie, which gives me a warm, tingling feeling inside. This feeling helped me create. I love this part. I go to work.
Later in the episode, his wife quits her job and now she's at home with him all day and she doesn't understand his process. To her, it looks like he's just goofing off, so she keeps getting in his way.
I relate to this so hard. Routines are vital to me and to so many of the localizers that I interviewed. And just like the late Bernie Mac, I also set up rewards for myself after I accomplish a set number of pages or lines of dialogue. Rewards include drinking tea, cooking and eating meals, taking naps, playing with our cats or foster kittens, or listening to the OP from ya boy Kong Ming on loop. Okay, I ate breakfast, took care of my personal hygiene, kissed my kitties, and sang through Chiki Chiki Bun Bun 3 times. Let's get to work.
Everybody translates at a different pace, and every series is different. One of the people I interviewed can translate a typical volume of manga in 2 days, while others I surveyed feel that a week is more reasonable. This also varies depending on how dialogue-rich the manga is and how many obscure, messily written kanji you have to look up. The same is true of anime, games, and light novels. Every studio, agency, and publishing house has different guidelines, different timeframes, and different delivery formats. And every project has different challenges, different writing styles, and different levels of difficulty. Because there are all these differences, and because most freelance localization professionals work in more than one field of entertainment, it can be difficult to fill your schedule comfortably, and it can be difficult to meet deadlines when they overlap. For freelance localization professionals, it's crucial to designate a daily quota for yourself if you want to turn in all your work on time.
After I finish a chunk of my quota, I give myself a reward. This keeps me motivated and on task. And after I finish this chunk of my quota, I will reward myself with an energizing workout.
Montage, a translating montage, a translating montage.
As for the translation process itself, that tends to mystify normies. From my interviews with local professionals and from my own experience, when a random person on the street hears what we do for a living, their reactions fall into one of 3 camps.
Wow! Oh, that is so cool. You must have had to train long and hard and just be really smart to be able to do all that.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a job.
Doesn't AI do that now?
Let's put a pin in this one.
Foreshadowing. And judging by my comments section over the years, fan perception of what our job entails also varies widely. And I have gone into intense detail in many different videos how the translation process actually works. But to summarize here,
Step 1, Japanese input into brain. Step 2, brain understand words and create images and emotions in response. Step 3, brain verbalizes images and emotions in English. Step 4, brain uses knowledge of Japanese and English to make sure English translation correctly captures not only the linguistic meaning but the emotional and artistic integrity.
creative translation is not a science. Yes, each individual Japanese word does have a short list of suitable English counterparts. Yes, there are grammar rules. And yes, to an extent, you can plug the words into a formula and get a translation. But creative translation is, well, creative. It's an art.
I've always loved to express myself creatively, not only in writing, but in art and music too. I strongly believe that you need to be a good creative writer in order to do good entertainment localization. It's not enough just to be able to speak another language.
It's like creative writing, except you bypass the first part where you come up with the story. The plot is given to you, and you know who all the characters are and the substance of what they say, line by line, but you still need to choose your words wisely to faithfully express these characters' motivations and their personalities. You need to craft your translations so that the mood of your prose matches the mood of the Japanese version. You have to take culture into consideration. You have to take the story genre and its intended audience into consideration. And on top of that all, you have to adhere to any guidelines given to you by your client. You have to make the text fit properly on the screen, in the speech bubbles. This is a big challenge, but to most of us, it's also a lot of fun.
Sometimes translations can be a little like a puzzle, and it gives me a similar joy to solve.
I enjoy translating itself. The puzzle, the wordplay, the challenge. It's all very engaging and fun for me.
I grew up bilingual, watching both Japanese and American TV shows, so localization always felt like a natural extension of myself. I like the challenge of finding ways to keep the meaning of a certain phrase or sentence in different languages. I especially like when people notice I localize something in an interesting or unique way.
I enjoy playing with words and matching tone and nuance. It brings me so much joy when I can find the exact right word choice, or a perfect way to make a joke land in English the same way it did in Japanese.
If you're an ADR scriptwriter, that is, a writer for anime and game dubs, this is even more so. You need to write lines of dialogue that sound natural in spoken English. You need to make the number of syllables match the mouth flaps of the animated characters. And you have to live in constant fear that certain fans will send you death threats over a particular word choice that they thought was too woke. Foreshadowing! Okay, back to work. While I'm here, I'm just going to walk you through the actual process of translating something start to finish.
Step 1. Familiarize yourself with the IP. If the IP is brand spanking new and you're the first translator, this part is easy. But if you're stepping in to translate volume 9 of a manga series or the anime adaptation of a light novel series you didn't read or translate previously, you need to make sure you are familiar with the source material and how key terms were translated so your translation flows seamlessly with the translation that came before. Step 2. Read through or listen to the material you're supposed to translate. Ideally, you have enough time to do this, but sometimes deadlines are tight and you need to read while you translate. Also, ideally, you'll have a copy of the actual thing you're translating and not just a transcript of it, but sometimes anime translators have to work off PDF scripts only and not the actual anime episode. And almost always, game translators have to work off just the script. Yes, we rarely get to see or play the actual game as we translate it. It's also helpful to read ahead in the series if you can. Sometimes something might come up in Volume 1 that will be significant later in Volume 5, and it's useful to know the best way to translate aforementioned something so it works in both contexts. Steps 3 and 4. Translate the material while making a terms base. If you're the first translator of an IP, you need to build a terms base as you go. That way, whoever translates any future adaptations can keep their terms consistent with yours. Also, you might get sick or fired, and any translator that takes over from you will need a terms base. And as far as the translation part goes, you'll need to deliver your translation in whatever format your client specified. With manga and light novels, it's usually MS Word, but for games, you're looking at Excel or CAT tools. And for anime, scripts are usually translated directly into the subtitling software or into Excel. Step 5. This step isn't exactly linear, I'm just putting it here, but I call this step wait for inspiration. Often you'll get stuck figuring out the best way to word something. Maybe it's a catchphrase and it has to sound really cool. Maybe it's in a character voice that's challenging for you to write. Or maybe brain's slow and forget words. Either way, you will flag things as you translate and have to fix them later. A lot of the brainstorming and pondering for these problematic lines will happen on your off hours, both consciously and subconsciously. Sometimes you'll workshop it with a friend or partner.
So I'm trying to think of a good translation for kusotare. It's kind of like shithead, except I don't want to use that word.
Motherfucker!
I considered that, but I didn't.
Sometimes you'll think it through while you're performing a chore.
Shit face. Fuck lord. Shit Alec.
And sometimes inspiration will strike you when it's least convenient.
Oh! Fuckface! Fuck!
Step 6. Read over your translation, ideally with a fresh mind. Fix anything you flagged and make sure everything reads smoothly. Step 7. Answer any questions or fix any errors your editor found after you turn in the translation. Usually there isn't much back and forth between roles since we aren't paid for it and deadlines are tight.
As I hope I've made clear, a lot of work happens outside the actual translation of the thing, but we're only paid for the translation of the thing. We're not paid to wait for inspiration to strike or to familiarize ourselves with the IP beforehand or to workshop translations for kusotare with our spouses. Neither are we paid to make our schedules, email clients, phone our banks to find out why our direct deposit didn't go through, or to navigate the jungle of self-employment taxes. In theory, all of this extra labor, along with the precarious nature of gig work in general, should mean we're paid a little extra. Foreshadowing! Anyway, I've met my next chunk of the quota, so it's time to reward myself with some lunch and with an episode of my favorite show this season. I hope that didn't make my microphone go swishy swishy. One-sama, can I ask you a question? Yes? Do you think I'm annoying? Aww. Are you sure you want to ask me that? Oh, well, I know you think I'm annoying. I'm your twin. Of course you think I'm annoying. I think you're annoying. Oh, okay. Hey! You see, I was just on the phone with a fan subber of my latest favorite anime. Ah, you mean fuchsia yogurt? Fuchsia yogi? It's just, you know I love my Tusky-sama. I just had to make sure that the translator was translating his lines correctly. So I just gave her a few corrections and... I see where this is going. Come on, One-sama, this is really important. I think I made an enemy of Kase fan subs. what if they don't send me the next volume of Fushigi Yugi? I already sent them my blank VHS and $6 for postage. That's $9 down the drain.
But aren't fan subs made by fans? I mean, surely these people care about Toski just as much as you do, probably even more than you do.
Nani? A bigger Toski fan than me? Onesama, what the fuck?
What the f***?
And here's my lunch, some sauteed eggplant and okra and homemade pilaf with a little salad of tomato, cucumber, feta, and herbs from my patio garden. Also a pinch of sumac. Not her kimono.
Well, that was a bit of a downer of an episode to watch in the middle of the workday. Poor Mio. I hope she eventually has a happy marriage. Anyway, I need some inspiration to get me through my next chunk of my daily quota, so I think at the end of my next chunk, I'm going to have a tea break. Ooh, and I'm going to make some really special cookies to go with it. Yeah, that's energizing. Okay, let's go!
Montage, translating montage, translating montage.
Okay, tea time. Let's make some cookies. It's a recipe that my husband and I actually came up with together over 10 years ago, long before we were married, but it's delicious and we still make it to this day. In my survey, I asked localizers to write in one paragraph or less what they liked about the profession. And here's some of what they had to say.
I grew up reading and watching all these stories, so it's incredibly fulfilling to get to be a part of them.
There's always something new to learn.
I'm very passionate about manga, so I love getting to produce high-quality manga work and occasionally work directly with artists I'm a fan of. Hours fly by, so a lot of the time I work more than I expect, but it's never miserable.
Getting something physically in your hands with your name on it feels good.
I really love the English and Japanese languages.
And then I asked localization professionals what they disliked about the profession.
No vacations.
I hate that companies won't hire us full-time. It's not like there's any shortage of work.
The pay is abysmal sometimes for the amount of work required, and it isn't consistent.
The NDAs that prevent wage transparency.
I don't need to be wealthy, but I wish it paid just a little
Work is
more.
unstable, underpaid,
Rates
or both.
are a race to the bottom.
Race to the bottom rates that prey on people being passionate about the subject matter.
I make enough money to get by, but when I think about how much translators used to earn in the 90s and early 2000s, I get so angry.
Bad pay for an extremely qualified job.
Retirement funds?
The pay.
Low pay.
The pay.
Low pay.
The low pay.
I think we need to talk about the pay. What the f***?
Titties and boobies and magical milkers.
Okay, we are live. How many people we got? 28? 29. Hey everyone. Okay, I think we'll start now. Oh, share the stream, like it, do the things, you know the drill. So yeah, wow, I just hit 10,000 subs on YouTube. Oh, go subscribe there if you haven't already. Oh, and please, please donate to the microphone fund and to the iPad fund so I can finally level up my game and do digital art. I mean, the construction board art is kind of cute and all, but I want to do real legit stuff. Anyway, I am so humbled that Attack on Titty is growing so quickly. I started making videos over there about a year ago, and it wasn't until the past 2 months that things finally started taking off. So for today's stream, I thought I'd do a little throwback, kind of celebrate for the 2% of you who were with me at the beginning. Ta-da! Anyway, this is Lily. She's an OC of mine. She's a mage who attends the Yuri Academy of Magic, and she's in love with a girl named Sachiko. Oh, thanks for the sub, Aaron Jägermeister. Please draw Beta Booba from the Eminence in Shadow. Yeah. Okay, I can give you all some Beta Booba. My OC's kind of dumb anyway. Beta Booba. Okay, Beta Booba it is. Beta Booba. Okay, so how's our week been? I worked double shifts all week, and I am half asleep. So I'm really looking forward to just chilling with you guys. Huh, Booba the Rock 69, did you see the latest Twitter drama? No, Booba the Rock 69, I didn't. Dare I ask? In the latest episode of Reincarnated as a Toilet in a Demon Lord's office, the translator had Benki-kun use the word safe space in the subs. What? And I thought anime was supposed to be a safe space, am I right? Yeah, I've just come to accept the fact that translators will insert their politics into our anime. I mean, you know, it's dumb. I'm not political. I don't think any of you guys are political either. I just want to chill and watch anime. Huh? Uzaki-chan is my wife who's 666. That's why I only watch fan subs, right? Yeah, I try to support fan subs, but they keep moving around. Kono Fansuba's channel got shut down a few days ago. Did you guys see that? F's in the chat for Kono Fansuba. Back to beta. Yeah, Crunchyroll doesn't give a shit about us fans. If their translators hate anime, they upload late. Uki Uki Paradise was like 2 hours late yesterday. 2 whole hours. Piss me off. I mean, I usually watch it before work, but I had to wait until I got home at like 1 a.m. Oppai Lord 234, not even woke translators can ruin Uki Yuki-chan's jigglicious oppai. Amen. In this house, we love some Uki Yuki-chan oppai. There. That a good beta-chan so far? Bees in the chat if you want to make her boobs bigger. So many bees. Okay, message received. So, aside from the safe space debacle, what did we think of our shows this week? Any interest?
Where am I? What is this place? And why does it kind of look like my house?
Why is there a laugh track?
What laugh track?
Look, can you go back to the 90s? I'm trying to do a video essay here.
Back to the 90s? You mean I'm in the future?
Yep, and you're looking at your future self.
My God, I'm gorgeous!
Thanks. I'm just gonna keep going. Only about 40% of us could support ourselves fully on localization work alone. The rest of us had to—
Wait, who are you talking about?
Localization professionals. That's people who edit, translate, and letter anime, manga, and light novels and games.
Wait, Watashi? Become a sugoi anime translator?
I know, hard to believe. Look, I'm trying to explain to everyone how we aren't getting paid enough. Can you just hang out until I finish? Then we'll see about getting you home.
Hai, yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Only about 40% of us could support ourselves fully on localization work alone. The rest of us had to either take another job or— Could you please chew more quietly? Go, get yourself a cup of tea and a cookie.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Only 40% of us could support ourselves on localization work alone in the year 2021. The rest of us either had to take another job or share expenses with a roommate, family member, or significant other. In my survey, I asked translators across all fields, anime, manga, light novels, and games, how much they were paid. Freelance translators are almost always paid per word or page or minute of anime, not per hour of work done. Because of this, the effective hourly wage of a translator can vary drastically. Not all companies pay the same rate, and translators all translate at different paces. So I took all of these factors into account when calculating the estimated average yearly wage of all fields combined. On average, across all fields, the average yearly salary of a Japanese to English and FIGS entertainment translator was just over $50,000.
$50,000? That's a lot of money.
I guess it sounds like a lot of money if you're young, or if you got zapped here from the 90s, but it's really not a lot. According to CNBC, the starting salary for recent college grads in the US is $56,000.
Oh, well, That's pretty close.
But this is before taxes. When you're a freelance worker, which 71% of people in the localization industry are, if you're in the US, which most of the companies for which we work are, you have to set aside 20 to 30% of your income for self-employment, income, and state taxes. Taking the average, 25%, this brings the average yearly income down to $37,705. And thanks to President Bernie Sanders, we finally got universal health care in my country, so we don't have to pay out of pocket for our health care. Oops, just kidding, we do have to pay out of pocket for our own health care.
Man, I wish I could go to that universe.
With average monthly premiums for individuals at $484, you have to subtract $5,808 from that yearly salary, bringing the average translator's actual yearly income down to $31,898 or $2,658 per month.
Okay, but couldn't you just live in a cheaper apartment and eat cheaper food? And if you work at home, you probably don't even need a car.
Yes, these dollar amounts are just averages. You can lower your bills by getting a roommate or by living in a state where the cost of living is cheaper. You can attempt to live without a car in the US, but speaking from experience, it blows. You can even eat beans and rice and make your own flour tortillas and save a couple $100 a month on your grocery bill. But over time, that takes a toll on your mental and physical health. Also, it needs to be noted that unlike salaried work, freelance work is precarious AF. I calculated the average salaries we can expect to earn if we work 40 hours per week and take 2 weeks off for vacation and sick days. But if you're a freelance worker, this is never how it actually works. One season, you might get assigned 3 anime series to translate, the next season, 0. You can try to fill in the gaps with a game project here, a manga project there, but the reality is you will go through dry spells as well as periods of overwork. There's also all the work that you do off the clock that I mentioned earlier. Emailing clients, making invoices, familiarizing yourself with IPs, waiting for inspiration to strike, doing your own taxes, applying for jobs. This is a big one. If you're freelance, you're constantly hired and fired, so you're constantly applying for work. The rates for freelance workers are supposed to take all this extra stuff into account and pay more, and yet, that's not funny. Remember, only 40% of the localization professionals I surveyed said they were able to support themselves fully on localization work alone. This means that 60% can't. These 60% either can't get enough work, they're paid lower rates, or they work so slowly that their rates are effectively lower.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe the pay isn't too low. Everyone's just too slow.
That does bring me to another important disclaimer. As I covered earlier, most of the translators that I surveyed has 6 or fewer years of professional translating experience. When you're paid by the completed job and not by the hour, the faster you are, the higher your hourly rate will effectively be. So I do believe that even if these rates do stay the same, as these translators get more experience, they will earn more money. But even for a starting wage, the average rates for all these fields is too low, especially considering most of us are college graduates. Even rookie translators deserve a living wage, and if translators have to translate faster and at greater capacity than they're capable of doing in order to afford basic necessities, the quality of your localized anime, manga, games, and light novels will suffer. You translate badly, therefore you need to be paid more? That's some logic.
Ah, Bubiko-senpai? Bubiko-senpai?
Why is there a laugh track?
Have a seat. Help yourself to a cookie. Are you from the 90s too?
No, I'm from the year 2023. I was in the middle of my stream when suddenly I was in this big swirly vortex thingy, and then this disembodied voice said I was gonna go to a parallel universe. Next thing I know, I'm in this old lady's apartment.
That's exactly what happened to me. Except I wasn't swimming in a stream. I was sitting on my couch.
Oh, no. A stream, it's kind of like a public access live TV show.
Ooh, what's your show about?
Anime boobs.
That's awesome!
Anyway, don't listen to this old hag. She's just playing the victim and trying to get your sympathy so she can ruin our anime and go to the bank while she's at it. Excuse me? Okay, you can stop doing that. I think we've milked the laugh track bit long enough. Thank goodness. Look, this isn't some grift. We really aren't being paid enough industry-wide.
Okay, well, maybe the companies can't afford to pay the translators more. And I don't want to pay more than $3 per VHS tape just to watch anime. I'm definitely not paying $10 per manga either.
Yeah, Crunchyroll already jacked up the prices and got rid of the free with ads option last year. You want us to pay even more money for your shitty translations? Okay, there are some problems with Crunchyroll, just not in the way that you think. Well, why don't you just work somewhere else? It won't be an option much longer. Since Sony bought Funimation and Funimation merged with Crunchyroll, it's only a matter of time before High Dive gets absorbed and we're left with a near monopoly on seasonal anime. And the last game I translated for an agency in Japan wound up being for Crunchyroll. It's hard to escape them, and as disconnected freelance workers, we have no bargaining power. Boo freaking who! You should be grateful you get to work in the anime industry at all.
Oh yes, I would kill to work on anime for a living.
Yeah, most fans would, but this old hag keeps whining about money. It's almost like you're not a real fan. But I am. Have you even seen the big three? No. They're for kids, okay? And I was an adult when they came out, so I'm just not that interested. What shows are you watching this season? My Happy Marriage. That's it? Hey, this season kind of sucks. Besides, I work 6 days a week and I've been really busy working on this for several months now. I just don't have much time. Bitch, I work 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and I still have time to keep up. See, I told you she's a fake fan.
Wow, if I had access to this Crunchyroll-y thingy, and I had access to 40 new anime every season for just $15 a month, I would watch everything.
Yeah, it's kind of expensive and the subs and dubs both suck, so that's why I stick to fan subs.
Well, I'm learning Japanese. Maybe I can stay here and make fan subs.
Ooh, great idea. You do a much better job than localizers like this one.
Wah, I hate anime and I don't know how to do my job. Give me more money, please.
It really is a shame. Anime is so much better when actual fans translate it.
Yeah, sorry to say, fans are not treated very well anymore.
Yeah, it was a prosthetic. The mafia cut off her arm. Wow, I didn't realize golf could be so intense.
Oh, and it's a feast for the eyes, too. Catherine Sama, Vipere Klein, even Aoi-chan have beautiful and bountiful bosoms to behold.
Man, there's just so much great anime to watch in the future. I can't wait.
Whatever you do, don't watch the dub version of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Just don't watch anime dubs in general.
Deal. I've seen some dubs and they are not great.
Well, I guess we gotta talk about the fans now.
They're so much better.
I enjoy being able to make Japanese media accessible to other people. All the anime, manga, and games that I consumed growing up were translated by someone, so my goal was to learn Japanese and do the same for others.
When I asked localization professionals what they liked and disliked about their job, the fans fell into both categories. On the one hand, loc professionals love bringing series to fans who otherwise wouldn't be able to understand them. Loc professionals also like going to cons, meeting fans, reading reviews, and geeking out with the fans. Remember, localization professionals are fans themselves.
I enjoy hearing about how people have loved the work I've done, and how it's made them feel strong emotions and made them fall in love with a character, a series, or a storyline.
I always like seeing positive fan reactions to projects I'm working on.
Making fans happy is the best part of the job.
But on the other hand, according to my survey and to my own experience, the harassment localization professionals receive online is a constant source of background anxiety for us. In my survey, I asked an open-ended question. What do you dislike about working in localization? And a staggering number of responses mentioned harassment from fans.
I dislike how disrespected Loc staff are by the fans, who feel comfortable sending death threats over a single word not being translated exactly how they personally wanted it. I dislike that I don't ever feel comfortable admitting publicly what IPs I've worked on, even if I've been given permission, because of the abuse that inevitably comes my way.
Games that I've worked on have received comments like hang all localizers for including things that they consider woke.
Harassment from fans is enough of an issue that I've made a few videos about it over the years. I've gone through the offending lines word by word and explained how a translation some fans thought was wrong or woke was correct and good, actually. But lately, I've come to think those videos are pointless. The people I really need to convince aren't going to sit through a video from somebody who they think is a liar and a fake fan. They're just going to dislike, write a hateful comment, and leave. Hey, we're just offering constructive criticism, and if you do your job correctly, we won't bother you. See, that's the thing. We are doing our jobs correctly. You guys don't even know what doing the job correctly entails. And you're not offering constructive criticism. You don't understand Japanese or translation well enough to offer constructive criticism. You're just being mean. Well, if you guys weren't such self-righteous assholes to the fans all the time, maybe we'd be a little nicer.
Look, we're just trying to make sure our animes are translated perfectly so that we get the best experience. Is that really too much to ask?
It's not too much to ask. No, I'm not going to debate you on your terms. We can't have a productive conversation as long as we're living in different realities. And what reality is that? In my reality, localization professionals are doing our best to translate manga and anime authentically. In your reality, we're mistranslating anime and manga on purpose to push an agenda and spite the fans. As long as you live in that reality, nothing I can say will convince you otherwise. Yeah, well, we have proof that No, you don't have proof. You have a handful of cringe translation examples that you keep recycling. And you have a few screenshotted shitposts from localizers taken out of context. That does not prove that we're some nefarious cabal of woke warriors trying to ruin anime or whatever the fuck that even means. Jeez, you're being really nice and professional right now. And that's another thing. You harass us, you send us death threats, make us scared to have an online presence, and then you have the gall to scold us for having feelings?
Hey guys, let's bring it down.
What about our feelings? You people have no respect for anime. You have no respect for the fans and no respect for the Japanese creators or their characters. Citation fucking needed. Well, thank you for proving my point.
Okay, let's pause. I had a lot of trouble writing this part of the script. Like, I wrote out 3 different versions and I scrapped all of them. The whole purpose of this scene was to show how a small but vocal faction of anime fans are misguided about how anime is localized, and then for me to enlighten them with facts and logic. But all of those failed scripts I wrote ended up sounded so contrived and fake. Like, there's no way I could convince someone like Bubiko-senpai that she's wrong about anime translation in a tidy 10-minute scene. And as intellectually satisfying as it would be for me to walk Tammy and Bubiko through the translation process and explain why it is possible for Japanese to be translated a number of different ways and still be correct, actually, I really don't think it would change their minds. People are emotional beings, and a lot of the animosity some fans feel towards translators is not coming from a place of logic. They get angry because of the way our translations make them feel. They love anime. Anime is a huge part of their identities, and they feel betrayed when their favorite character uses a word they don't think that character would use, or when the overall vibe of a sub or dub clashes with their perception of that anime. Other personal biases come into play too. Fruits Basket is going to hit differently for you if you're Team Yuki rather than Team Kyo. Anime like Your Lie in April and Dance Dance Danseur are going to hit different for you if you're a pianist or a dancer, or if you have an abusive parent or guardian. Your politics and ideology will also influence how you perceive an anime and its characters. That last I checked, the anime community still can't agree whether Attack on Titan is pro or anti-fascism, for example. And because, as fans, we all approach anime with different life experiences, different hopes and dreams, and different ideologies, we're each going to have our own unique version of that anime and its characters in our hearts. Eren Yeager is different to every Attack on Titan fan. Toru is different to every Fruits Basket fan. Megumin is different to every Konosuba fan. I am a different person to everyone who watches my videos. You are a different person to everyone who's ever met you. So even the best translator will never be able to translate anything exactly the way every fan wants. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how correct the translations are. If a fan feels like the vibe is off, the vibe is off. So, since this is a video essay, and there seems to be a rift in the space-time continuum anyway, I'm gonna rewind a bit and start over.
Really is a shame. Anime is so much better when actual fans translate it.
Yeah, sorry to say, the fans are not treated very well anymore. Anime changed my life. Huh? I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I had never watched that first episode of Sailor Moon, if I never got into anime. I was sort of at a crossroads when anime came into my life. I was taking intensive ballet classes almost every day, and some of the adults in my life had their hearts set on me turning pro after I graduated high school. And I had my heart set on it too. I loved ballet, and I was really good at it, but I never really fit in with the other dancers. I don't know about nowadays, but back in the 90s, the ballet world was not exactly a place where you'd find nerds, geeks, and dorks. And I was a nerd, a geek, and a dork. I had no friends in junior high. Cool kids threw peanuts at me and whispered and laughed as they passed me in the halls. I sat alone at lunch, or I hid in the band room pretending to do homework. I was a bit of an outcast in ballet class too. But anime fans? Now every single one of them was a nerd, a geek, and a dork. And when I got into Sailor Moon my freshman year of high school, my love of it helped me build a group of nerdy, geeky, dorky friends. Then the internet came to the average home, and I made more nerdy, geeky, dorky friends online. My love of anime not only got me a network of like-minded friends, it was an outlet for all of my creative passions. Anime and manga inspired me to draw, write music, sing, write movie scripts and fanfics, design and sew cosplay. And anime introduced me to the Japanese language, a language I felt an immediate connection to. I was learning German at the time, and I was starting to feel burnt out. But I was so excited about Japanese, and studying it was a joy. I don't think I've ever been so self-motivated to study anything as I was to study Japanese. If I had never gotten into anime, I probably would have become a ballet dancer, and I would have liked it for a while, but I'm not sure I would have liked the life that came with it. Ballet dancers tend to live in big cities with roommates, and I hate big cities, and I don't like living with people, except my husband, of course. I would have had a really hard time making friends, and I would be forced to be around people all the time. I'm an introvert, and at this point I'm 99% sure I'm neurodivergent. Being around people, especially normal people, it drains me. Ballet careers are pretty short too. I probably would have had to quit in my early 30s. And then what would I have done? I'd be an awkward nerd with no friends and no college education. I like to think of this version of myself in a parallel universe would have still found her way and had a good life. I really do love ballet, and I probably would have made that work. Hell, I might even be teaching ballet at my own studio now instead of making this video. But anime changed my whole life trajectory, and I'm glad it did. Anime and manga gave me friends, a tribe, a purpose, a career. Yes, there's problems in the industry. Many of us are overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. But I get to wake up whatever I want, wear whatever I want, and translate stories written in a beautiful language every day from the comfort of my own couch. I get to provide an escape for other nerds, geeks, and dorks out there. I haven't watched the big three. I don't keep up with the popular anime every season, but that doesn't make me any less of a fan than either of you. Tammy, you have such a great joy and a creative spirit. You have an infectious positivity, the kind of optimism that can make the world a better place. And Bubiko-senpai, I can tell that you're angry about the state of the world. There's a lot of cruelty out there, a lot of injustice, and no matter how hard you work, you can never seem to get a leg up. You're right to be angry. You're just angry at the wrong people. But you're smart and creative and funny. Your pun game is really on point, by the way.
And you have a lot to contribute to anime once you find your stride. There's no right or wrong way to be an anime fan. And we're all anime fans. I told you why anime is special to me. Why is anime special to you?
My story with anime begins back in 2018, maybe 2019, with a little show called Toradora. So back then, I remember I was super depressed. I just had my heart broken, and it was, in general, just a really rough time in my life. So one day, I was spamming my friend with GIFs of all the depressed-looking people I could find on Discord, as one does naturally when they're upset. And then this GIF of this brown-haired anime girl slumped over a desk popped up, and for some reason that GIF just really resonated with me on that day. So I asked my friend, who was a much bigger weeb than I am, where this girl was from, and he was like, oh, her name is Aisaka Taiga, she's from a show called Toradora. And I was like, oh, Toradora, I might as well check it out, she seems cute, it can't possibly make my life any worse than it already is. So I watched it, and it turned out that show was kind of exactly what I needed at the time. It was just really heartwarming, it was adorable, and it just pulled me out of whatever slump I was in.
When I was in kindergarten, I used to cry every day because I was lonely. My family loved me, but no one outside of them wanted to play with me. One day, I was watching TV and coincidentally saw the first episode of Naruto. And that scene where he was sitting on the swing really impacted me. It's also funny how I used to sit on the swing alone a lot too. I could sympathize with his loneliness, and the rest was history. I wouldn't be who I am today. And without manga, well, BL manga to be specific, I wouldn't have gotten out of severe depression either. Both anime and manga have helped me through loneliness, anxiety, depression, when my mental health was the absolute lowest. I couldn't even imagine being here without it. And I will always be glad that I managed to find it so early in my life.
I've been an anime fan for 25 years, but in the 90s my exposure was really limited to what I could watch on cable, so it wasn't until 2013 with the help of Netflix that I was able to start exploring the expansiveness of anime. At the time, I was in a queer platonic relationship, and we were both going through a particularly devastating time, and Princess Jellyfish became our biggest comfort. To this day, we exchange little jellyfish-themed gifts, but I, being asexual and monogamous, and she being allosexual and polyamorous, our relationship was not destined to stay in that form forever. It was actually with her help that I met Royce, a fellow ace, and now my spouse of 9 years. Early on, Royce reached out to her and said, "You wanted me to watch Princess Jellyfish," so I went ahead and did so several months ago, and we all joked that my soon-to-be spouse was a time traveler. Now, Royce and I have been watching anime together since day one. Royce has been exposed to more anime than I have, so I love being introduced to their old favorites as well as discovering new ones together.
A variety of factors got me interested in learning Japanese right around the same time. But since Code Geass was the first anime I watched subbed instead of dubbed, wanting to understand what they were saying in Japanese really motivated me, maybe a little bit too much. I now use Japanese on pretty much a daily basis at work. To be a little bit more specific, apart from Code Geass, there are a few series that have had a really specific impact on my life. Fruits Basket and Oren and Cosplay really solidified the friend group that I have now. D-Gramman, and specifically a poor fan translation, and being a little bit too invested in what the text actually said, pushed me towards becoming a manga translator. Another specific example, the manga series Cantarella at a nearby anime convention helped me decide which city to choose for study abroad in college. While working in Japan, watching Haikyuu motivated me and a friend to join a local Obasan volleyball team. And Ajin got me to actually use Twitter, which later led to my job working on manga. So who will say which series it'll be next?
For me, working in the anime industry was the answer to a lifelong puzzle. I had a lot of difficulty figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. I came up with a lot of ideas, but for one reason or another, I couldn't get them as a full-time career, or I slowly lost interest. As someone who wanted nothing more than to work my dream job, not having a dream job was a distressing prospect. Figuring out that the anime industry was even an option for me opened up a world of possibilities, and within it I found several different careers. Voice actor, director, scriptwriter, production coordinator, all to contribute to anime, something I've loved ever since I was a kid.
Wow, this lifestyle vlog really went off the rails.
And I am really behind on my daily quota, so I'm just gonna get back to work. Hopefully I can get another chunk of work done today.
Hi, Sarah.
Ah, fuck.
Are you tired of localizers ruining your anime? Do you wish anime was translated exactly the way you want? Introducing iSing, the first AI-generated anime song compilation.
Mr. Twinkle Color, it did the precious thing. Because never forget. Also cats, also ladles. Everyone is whimsy and pain.
Fall in love with your favorite anime songs, translated as God intended, by an unbiased AI-chan.
Captured humiliation is pioneer of counterattack.
Since we didn't have to pay a human to translate these songs, we saved so much money. Savings which we'll pass on to our shareholders.
As if becoming want to cry moonlight. Even phone can't be done midnight. I want to meet you now.
Stream classics like these and other AI-generated anime songs now on our exclusive app. Only $25 a month.
Heartless angels, thesis in time jump.
Sign up for iSing today.
I remember this apartment. Really wish I appreciated it when I still had it. You're me from the future. What gave it away, my subtle yet classic beauty? How many years in the future? 20 years. The year 2043. You might as well sit down. So, am I still translating? No. It's not because I retired early, I take it. No, it was a lot of things. A sprinkle of inflation, a dash of world-changing events, a heap of burnout. No, and AI. Okay, for this part of the video to make sense, we need to talk about AI. The question, will AI take my job away, has been swimming around in the collective subconscious for at least a decade now. But over the past year, this question has taken over the zeitgeist in earnest. Oh, I was so cute when I thought I could be a video essayist. Like, comment, subscribe, lovelies. Look, you're me. You understand how AI translation works. Why don't you take on this section of the video? Okay, great. I'm getting a glass of water. It's hot as balls. She thinks this is hot. Foreshadowing. Okay, well, machine translation, or MT, has been around since long before the year 2022, but it wasn't until the 2020s that companies started using MT in earnest. 39% of my survey respondents said that they had been offered a post-machine translated job in anime, manga, light novels, or games. So it's not a question of will AI take our jobs, but when will AI take away our jobs?
I just like how unstable the industry is as a whole, and how desperate upper management are to completely replace us with shitty technology, despite how hard we work to make their products successful.
More and more companies are cutting corners, relying on machine translation and cheap labor, even when the quality of the finished product suffers.
So you might be asking, just how good were AI translations in the 2020s? Honestly, they were a mixed bag. Sometimes the translations were correct and serviceable, but sometimes the translations were flat out wrong. And unless you were fluent in both Japanese and English, you wouldn't know when the translations were wrong. Also, Google translated stuff, even when it was technically correct, didn't always sound the best.
Also cats, also ladles.
In 2023, everyone was obsessed with ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT was not actually all that revolutionary. It really was just more an advanced version of a search engine. You could ask it questions and it would draw upon the entirety of the internet to give you an answer, and it would present that answer to you by stringing together the words that its predictive text thinks go well together. So it kind of feels like you're chatting with an actual human being instead of an algorithm. Now, before we talk about AI more, I need to make one thing clear. AI does not understand Japanese. It doesn't understand English either. It's just drawing upon 1 million terabytes of data, making connections, and spitting out the most likely answers. AI has no emotional connection with the material it translates. AI is not a fan. So, with all that in mind, let me walk you through how ChatGPT translates. Let's start by plugging in a sentence. Tsuki ni kawatte o shiokyo. It's Sailor Moon's catchphrase, and it's the badass yet cringe thing that she yells at the monster of the day before she spins around in a bunch of pretty colors to defeat them with a piece of jewelry. So let's prompt. Translate tsuki ni kawatte oshokyo into English. And here's the response from ChatGPT-chan.
Tsuki ni kata oshioku yo can be translated to English as a punishment in exchange for the month, or I'll make you pay for this with interest. This phrase is often associated with the idea of revenge or retribution and is sometimes used playfully or ironically in modern Japanese culture.
That translation is just wrong. Tsuki can mean both month and moon in Japanese, so linguistically, a punishment in exchange for the month isn't actually that far off. But yeah, it's just wrong. I did find it interesting, though, that ChatGPT-chan added a very long translator's note, and that part of it, sometimes used playfully or ironically in modern Japanese culture, was relevant to the text. Yeah, Sailor Moon's catchphrase is incredibly cheesy. The cool thing about ChatGPT is you can give it more detailed instructions. So here's a new prompt. Translate tsuki ni kawatte oshokyo into English. The character saying this line of dialogue is an anime superhero. She's 14 years old and she's a magical girl. I'm adding this specificity in hopes that the AI will give this line of dialogue some character voice, but I know it's also possible that could clue ChatGPT-chan into the fact that this is a famous line from Sailor Moon. And sure enough, check out ChatGPT's response.
In that case, a possible translation of Tsuki ni kata oshioko yo in the context of an anime superhero magic girl would be, I'll punish you in the name of the moon. This is a famous catchphrase from the Japanese anime series Sailor Moon, which features a team of magical girls who use their powers to protect the world from evil forces. The line is often used by the main character, Sailor Moon, when she is about to confront her enemies and unleash her powers.
Once again, ChatGPT-chan gave me a very long translator's note informing me of the origins of this line of dialogue. And aside from swapping the order of "in the name of the moon" and "I'll punish you," ChatGPT-chan's translation was not only correct, but it was a copy of an existing translation. Okay, so that was probably too easy. Tsuki ni kawatte oshokyo is such a famous line of dialogue that all ChatGPT-chan had to do was find out it was from Sailor Moon, a property that's been officially translated many times over, and go from there. Okay, cool, but how does ChatGPT handle longer sections of Japanese text that were never officially translated? Let's ask ChatGPT-chan to translate a small section of a light novel. Ooh, use Seiranden. That's an out-of-print Fushigi Yugi light novel without an official English translation. I actually spent the last year walking my patrons through the translation process of that on my sister channel, Sarah Moon Japanese, so check that out later if you've got 24 hours to kill. Like, comment, subscribe. Okay, let's give ChatGPT-chan a simple passage from the light novel Seiranden, along with a simple prompt. Translate the following passage from a light novel into English. You know, ChatGPT's translation is actually mostly correct. Here, I'm marking up the translation. I'm highlighting sections that sound unnatural in yellow, and I'm highlighting the sections that were incorrect in green.
This is a story that girls can only be told when they turn 10 years old. Moreover, only to girls. And so the young girl began to speak. This lake has a very romantic legend, besides the fact that our Lord appears here. There is a shell here called the Syrian pearl. This shell can only be seen by women who have someone they love from the bottom of their hearts. Inside the shell, there are two pearls that are as blue and beautiful as the water in this lake. The two people who find the pearls will share them as proof of their love for the rest of their lives. The 10-year-old girl blushed a little. Hey, Aru, are you listening? Talia looked at the boy beside her. Huh? Oh yeah, I'm listening, replied Aru, seeming a bit absent-minded. Talia's mood was slightly dampened by this response. This is why boys are like this. Saying that, Talia tossed another pebble with a snap.
So, as you can see, with these prompts, ChatGPT-chan gave a translation that was mostly correct, but it lacked emotion and character voice, and it wasn't formatted properly as a novel. And one line was blatantly mistranslated. So let's give the AI some more specific instructions. Translate the following passage from a light
light novel into English. Tarlia, the girl telling the story, is a bubbly, courageous girl who has a crush on her friend Ayuru. She's a little shy to tell him this story because it's her special way of hinting to him that she has a crush on him. Format this like a novel. I gave ChatGPT-chan a different romanization for the girl's name, Tarlia, and I told the AI what kind of person she was and what her motivations were in this scene. And I told the AI to format this translation like a novel in hopes that it would have paragraphs instead of a solid blob of text. Now, let's see what ChatGPT-chan did with that. It just straight up wrote a whole new paragraph at the beginning of the translation. The AI also took some liberties and added some extra narrative text between the lines of dialogue. I highlighted all those sections in blue.
Tarlia took a deep breath and turned to Aru, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been wanting to tell him how she felt for a long time, but every time she tried, the words caught in her throat. This time, though, she had a plan. She had heard a story, one the girls were only told when they turned 10 years old. It was a story about a lake, a shell, and 2 pearls that were said to be the proof of true love.
Okay, new prompt. Add the instruction, express Tarlia's crush on Ayuru in her lines of dialogue. Don't add extra words into the narrative parts.
This is a story that girls can only learn when they turn 10 years old, and it's a really romantic legend, not just some story about the Lord of the Lake. You see, there's a shell called the Syrian pearl that can only be seen by women who have someone they truly love in their hearts. Inside the shell, there are 2 pearls, as blue and beautiful as the water in this lake, and the 2 people who find them will share them as a symbol of their love forever. Tarlia looked at the boy next to her. Hey, Aru, are you even listening? Huh? Oh yeah, I'm listening, Aru replied, a little absent-mindedly. Feeling a little disheartened, Tarlia muttered, "This is why boys are so frustrating." And with that, she threw another pebble with a plop.
Dang. That's the best translation yet.
Thanks, bestie.
Yeah, Tarlia's speech finally got more natural in this one. And most impressively, ChatGPT-chan finally translated that last line correctly. Kore dakara otoko no kotte is a difficult line for a machine to translate. It literally means, this is why boys are like this, but functionally it's more akin to, ugh, boys. The AI did, however, leave out some of the narrative text this time. Anyway, I'm sure with the right prompts you could get ChatGPT to pump out mostly serviceable translations. But again, because AI don't actually understand the Japanese or English languages, you're still going to need a human translator to check the AI's work for errors. You'll also need a human translator to give it the right prompts to produce a good translation in the first place. Really, with all the work required to make AI translation any good, you might as well just have a human translator do the job. It's actually less work that way. I have a video up on my sister channel, Sarah Moon Japanese, where I walk you through these AI translations in greater detail if you're interested. Like, comment, subscribe. When I asked some of the translators from my survey and personal interviews what they thought of AI translations, most of them were highly skeptical that AI could ever replace them, but they were still worried that the limitations of AI wouldn't stop corporations from using AI to save money. Remember, 39% of my survey respondents said that they had already been offered a post-machine translation edit job. AI is already restructuring and taking away jobs in our industry. And unless there's negative consequences from using AI, like the fans complaining and boycotting, companies will use AI as much as they can get away with. And then there's the ethics of AI translation. How did the AI learn how to translate in the first place? Professional localizers' work is being used without our consent and without compensation in order to teach AI how to take away our jobs. If we human translators were compensated, much in the same way that book authors get paid whenever their books are turned into movies or TV shows, that would at least make an AI takeover a bit more equitable. But I haven't seen any residuals yet. Don't hold your breath, sweetie. AI technology did improve, and lots of people in all industries lost their jobs. I envy that one universe where we had universal basic income, and the transition to AI-dominated job market wasn't so painful. Okay, let's say AI does get good enough in the future to translate things well enough to be serviceable. AI will still never have something that humans have: feelings. Empathy is a vital part of art, creation, and appreciation. How a line of dialogue makes people feel, how the words look or sound together is just as important as the literal meaning of the words.
If AI is given a scene in an anime that's supposed to make you cry, the AI won't feel any of that emotion, and it won't try to capture the emotion of that scene in its translation. It's a subtle difference, but in my opinion, a crucial one. Storytelling is an art. Weaving the best words together to tell that story is also an art. Now, I've seen some anime fans online argue that AI translation would be better than human translation because you're eliminating the biases and emotions of the translator and getting the author's pure, unadulterated message directly to the fans. But manga and anime, especially anime, are a collaborative process. There's always other people with their hands on the work besides the author. Assistants, editors, copy editors, consultants, designers, marketing teams. And with anime, you have animators, voice actors, directors, musicians adding their voices to the work. Anime has always been a collaborative process, and localizers are every bit as part of that collaboration as everyone else.
More like a collaborative process of AI, 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 and AI. By 2026, AI translation was the norm in the localization industry. Companies had to choose between embracing AI to keep their costs low or going out of business. And I had to choose between becoming an editor in a field now overly saturated with orphan translators or quitting. So I quit.
So, what job did you take after you quit translating?
Whatever I could get my hands on, I guess. Let's just say the concept of jobs changed drastically just before the year 2030.
How did you pay rent?
Well, after the real estate market crash of 2024 and all the debt bubble bursts, the US plunged into a Great Depression. Other countries in the world followed suit. We moved in with some friends. That's basically what everyone was doing. It became pretty normal to share a one-bedroom apartment with 20 people.
That sounds very uncomfortable.
It was. Barely enough floor space to lay out our sleeping bags. But then, the 2027 pandemic wiped out about a third of the US population. That gave us a little more room. Until the climate refugees started pouring in next year.
2028? That soon?
Yup. Atlantic current collapse, baby. Most of the southern hemisphere is completely uninhabitable. The tropics are boiling, Europe's in an ice age, and the entire state of Florida is underwater. Ah, well, there's a silver lining.
Look, why are you here?
I'm here to save you. Save me from what? From yourself. You're wasting your time making this video. Oh, it'll get a few thousand views and you'll feel a little temporary catharsis from it, but that's all.
Go away.
Keep your head down. Earn as much money as you can and invest in that little commune your friend wants to start. We are all fucked. And nobody cares whether your localization friends that you've never met IRL earn a living wage or not. In a few years, nobody will even care about anime anymore.
Go away.
Soon enough, all anyone's gonna care about is where their next clean drink of water's coming from, who's safe to sleep next to at night, and which rich asshole's bunker we're raiding next. In the grand scheme of things, a silly piece of entertainment is worthless.
Go away!
Keep your head down.
You people have no respect for
anime.
Fan
Perception of what our
for
job
fans.
entails by fans.
For fans.
For
by
fans.
By fans.
What do I do now? This video needs an ending. I need to tie everything together, tell people why they should care, have a call to action. Write an ending to my video essay.
LOL, you're on your own, bestie. Bye!
So I started working on researching Japanese cultural elements in anime and manga. And I actually started a little document that was simply descriptions of what things were. The first entry was Tori, the little gate at Shinto shrines. And then I just went on from there. Historical personages, events, landmarks, foods, articles of furniture, anything that was Japanese culture, I added to the document, and I would post it on Usenet. The web was not really there yet, and I would periodically add more to it and stick it up again and again and again. Well, fast forward a few years, I'm at an anime convention. I had brought printouts to edit, and I made a second printout just to show folks. I showed it to Fred Schott, and because I was a long admirer of his book, Manga. Long story short, for 6 months, Fred kept telling me I should turn it into a book. And I kept saying, it's a fan project. I want to leave it as a fan project. One day we've met up in Japantown for lunch, saying about your guide. I said, shut the hell up, Fred. I'll do the book. So that resulted in my first book, The Anime Companion. And ever since then, I've been writing about anime and manga and reading a lot about Japan. So I think that's made my life better.
I didn't know how I should end this video. I'm still not entirely satisfied with what I came up with, but at least I look cute. And that was my tea. That was the bit. Done. The video's over. So I set out to make this video because I love the localization industry. I work for companies where I feel valued. I get to translate stories I love, and I earn enough that I get to have a decent quality of life. But things weren't always this good for me as a localizer, and I knew that many of my peers were in the same boat. So I wanted to understand the industry, its workers, and its relationship to the fans better. And I wanted the fans to understand this better too. People in anime, manga, game, and light novel localization all have one thing in common. We all love Japanese entertainment, and we want to make the localizations of it as good as possible. But the current business model of the industry as a whole threatens the quality of localization. Most of the work is freelance and offers no protections, benefits, or stability to its workers. We often go uncredited, and this is a bad thing for many reasons. First, if you're not credited for the work that you do, who's going to believe you if you put it on your resume? This is especially true of localizers who work for LSPs or language service providers. Sometimes the big guys outsource their projects to these LSPs, and it's common practice for these LSPs to make their workers sign NDAs that prevent them from disclosing that they worked on any of the projects. Secondly, if localizers aren't credited for their work, then they can't be held accountable if they actually do shoddy work. There's less incentive for them to do their best work either, especially if they're overbooked and stressed out of their minds. And third, and this is the one I've really been trying to hammer home in this entire video, if localizers aren't credited for their work, they're invisible to the fans. Most anime fans can name the voice actors of their favorite shows, the mangaka of their favorite manga, but can they name the translators? The letterers? If fans start to recognize which loc staff are behind their favorite shows, we might be able to start to build a more positive, connected relationship with the fans. They might start to see us as people and fellow fans, instead of nameless, shadowy gatekeepers who stand between them and their favorite shows. We are all increasingly concerned about AI. Some of those LSPs I mentioned earlier, as well as sketchy upstarts, are trying to get away with using AI to localize your favorite stories so they can undercut the big guys. When they do this, everybody loses. The more established companies lose because their competitors offer a much cheaper product. Loc professionals lose because it kills our jobs and drives our wages even further down. And the fans lose because the quality of your anime, manga, games, and light novels suffers. We are also increasingly concerned about corporate consolidation.
Considering the recent Crunchyroll Funimation merger, I understand the concerns there. Whenever there is a merger, people do get laid off, so there isn't a redundancy with certain positions. If there is more competition or streaming services out there, then opportunities will exist, but on a very limited basis.
If Crunchyroll or Netflix gets a monopoly on seasonal anime, localizers will have no choice in where they work, and you fans will have no choice in where you get your anime. Everyone loses, except the suits at the top. Having said that, this isn't going to unravel into a big anti-capitalist rant. As a great philosopher once said, nuance is a thing. And the fact is, not every company that localizes Japanese entertainment is a big soulless megacorp who only cares about the bottom line, or a sketchy tech bro startup whose entire business model runs on undercutting the competition with a shitty product from AI and cheap labor. At the risk of sounding like a bootlicker, not all companies are bad, actually. Salty.
I've only been working in localization professionally for about 4 months now, but I get the impression from other localizers that loc companies can be hit or miss, i.e. missed payments, overwork, low pay. It's not necessarily something I dislike, but more so something that worries me as a rookie. I wish we had better protections as workers against these things.
There are still a number of different localization companies, streaming services, publishing houses, and dubbing studios. Some are older and were established before or around the fansub boom of the mid-90s. Others are quite new and are more like descendants of mid-90s and early 2000s fansub and scanlation culture. And a lot of these companies were started by fans. Also, remember how I said this 2 hours ago?
Japanese animation, a once niche and nerdy fascination, is now mainstream.
While that is true for your Attack on Titans, your Demon Slayers, your One Pieces, and your Pokemons, it's not exactly true for anime series that are niche or pre-2010. And while you can very easily buy translated manga at Barnes & Noble, it's only as mainstream as other comics are. Games are probably the most mainstream medium of them all, but that doesn't mean every game produced by every studio is a money-making banger. So what I'm trying to say is, at least part of the reason why wages are so low for localizers is not everything they localize is necessarily that profitable. It's expensive to license an IP, to pay a staff to translate, edit, copy edit, quality check, letter, print, and advertise it. It's expensive to hire an ADR scriptwriter, a director, voice actors, and somebody to edit the whole anime dub together, especially for a fan base who is hostile to dubs. While some localized entertainment does make bank, and some companies can afford to pay their localizers more, like probably you and definitely you, not all companies can. That doesn't mean it's okay for them to pay their workers less than what they deserve, but it does mean that in order to pay their workers more, they might need to lay some people off, raise their prices, or make less risky licensing picks. I mean, hats off to Disc Attack for being so niche and yet still managing to stay in business. Anyway, TLDR, in the grand scheme of things, this industry is still quite young. Some growing pains are inevitable. There's also another factor that I'm a bit nervous to bring up, so I'll let one of my fellow localizers I interviewed broach the subject.
I have a wishy-washy feeling about how many of us in this industry now are grown-up weebs from the 90s and early 2000s. It could be a beautiful thing of people with tons of passion getting their hands on the reins, or a terrible disaster of people who are not prepared to take the job professionally, treating the industry like wish fulfillment. Only time will tell.
Remember how I spent the first 45 minutes of this video going through the role fansubs and scanlations played in popularizing Japanese entertainment and growing the loc industry into what it is today? Well, that wasn't all a good thing.
I have been told directly by a project manager that anime scripts are never worth translating to a high quality. It's an attitude born of decades of low-quality loc scripts leading people to think Japanese media is written poorly, which in turn lowers pay and tightens deadlines, which leads to worse quality scripts, which on and on.
Since fansubbing and scanlating were a huge part of the industry from the mid-90s to the early 20-teens, and since fansubbing and scanlating are still a thing today, in spite of the fact that there is so much officially licensed series to enjoy, some of the qualities and attitudes born from this guerrilla localization era linger on in the professional industry today. Since anime and manga were spottily translated by passionate but inexperienced fans, people came to expect stilted English prose in their anime subtitles. Since fan subgroups of the late Zeros competed against each other to see who could get this week's episode out the fastest, studios today have to prioritize speed over quality, because it's what the fans have come to expect. Since fansubbing groups were pretty chill and not at all professional, sometimes they were quite petty actually, the work culture at Crunchyroll, according to a couple people I interviewed, tends to be lax, not very communicative or professional. Since translators for fansubs and scanlations were paid very little, if at all, translators today are expected to do the job for very little. And I don't like saying this, but it certainly doesn't help that we localizers are so willing to be underpaid to do our dream jobs. I wish I had thought to ask this on my survey, but anecdotally I have heard other localizers admit that if their dream IPs were offered to them, they would do it for free. So we just picked up a new license, the Glass Mask manga.
I'll do it for free! No, I'll pay you! Take my money!
It really doesn't help that in our society, we're taught to undervalue art and the people who make art. That you're not a true artist if you want to make money so you can not die and stuff. You're not a true anime fan if you want your wages to reflect the high skill and years of education and experience required for the job. I still feel shame to this day getting paid to do something that I love. It feels like wrong. Like if I don't hate my job, it's not a real job and therefore I don't deserve to get paid. This attitude makes it hard for artists to advocate for ourselves and easy for companies to exploit that. But we need to reject the idea that artists and people who do what they love don't deserve to be paid. You might not need art or entertainment to survive in your day-to-day life, but it sure makes life worth living. Music has gotten people through the loss of a loved one. Books and movies have inspired people and changed their lives. And something as seemingly trivial as wanting to know what happens in the next episode of a series has prevented people from ending their lives. Art and entertainment are not trivial, and the people who make art and localize entertainment deserve to be fairly compensated for their work. And this is where some of you might be thinking, well, I'm not getting paid enough at my job either. Why should I care about localizers? And you're right to feel angry. Low wages, the gig economy, monopolies, and a skyrocketing cost of living is a problem for all workers all over the world right now. Chances are high that you, person watching this video, work very hard and are still having a really hard time just paying for basic necessities. But it doesn't have to be this way. You should fight to improve your industry and your quality of life too. Well, it just sucks for everyone. Shouldn't be an excuse to give up. We're all in this together.
We've got practically 0% unemployment. Everybody is working, but nobody can afford rent because this has happened to every worker in every industry. So when you look at Starbucks, Amazon workers unionizing, and the resurgence that we're seeing in Hollywood labor, I think it's all of a piece. It's all the same movement.
In my survey, the last question was, in general, what are your feelings on where the loc industry is headed? Options for answers ranged on a sliding scale from very optimistic to very pessimistic. 24% were somewhat optimistic, 36% were somewhat pessimistic, and 35% were neutral. So while we lean pessimistic, overall we fall somewhere in the middle. I asked this question again in personal interviews, and here's what some of the respondents had to say.
I think I'm optimistic about the future of the industry, at least when it comes to localizing for the American English-speaking market. I think the community, including those who work directly at the publishing houses, are pretty tight-knit, and all I've seen the past few years from everyone in the community is positivity and working to make the industry better for everybody.
But I'd like to say I'm optimistic. Opportunities will always exist in some capacity, and the right person will find the right project. If a passionate person can make a new anime distributing licensing company, then hopefully they can provide the appropriate wages.
The people working in this industry have a choice to make with every show, to do the bare minimum or to go above and beyond. The pessimist in me says, why would anyone go above and beyond when this industry can be so soul-crushing? Fans often hate dubs, the pay isn't great, and everything has to be done yesterday. Why would anyone try? But I'm optimistic that some people just will anyway. They love their craft, and even if people hate what they produce, they get self-satisfaction from a job well done. So I can hold on to that hope simultaneously.
Another thing that was uplifting for me to see is, as a community, localizers have a great deal of mutual respect and solidarity.
I really enjoy the community of freelancers in my field who are always around to give everyone a kind word when they need it.
I love working with my friends and getting credited together with them.
The folks that I work with are amazing. Everyone is incredibly creative, and I've learned so much from their writing and translating styles.
This is my dream job. I love the community and the media. I love feeling appreciated for my work by the fans. I love the way the loc worker community lifts each other up.
At the time of recording, the Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA strike is still going on. Writers in Hollywood are currently facing similar problems to Japanese entertainment localizers. Instability, low wages, and the threat of AI is hanging over them too. The Hollywood strike is inspiring, but their strike is only possible because the writers and actors are in unions. Aside from some anime dub workers, most people in the Japanese entertainment localization industry are not union, but that's starting to change. Last summer, the workers of Seven Seas successfully unionized. It was encouraging to see so many fellow localizers and fans show their solidarity by displaying the compass emoji on social media. Sega's workers also unionized this summer, and these unions are a good thing. Unions aren't just for getting back at out-of-touch CEOs and getting more money. They're ultimately about improving the product and saving the industry. Localizers are also taking matters into their own hands and forming their own companies and co-ops. And this is something that really excites me, and I hope to see more of it in the future. Keeping projects small, with tight-knit teams of passionate fans, would be a return to our roots of for fans, by fans localization, except this time it's legal. When fans get together, we can accomplish amazing things. I think back to the Save Our Sailors campaign in the 90s and how that sort of passion and energy could help the localization industry today. If you care about having quality manga and anime in your language, you should support the ecosystem as much as you are able. If money is tight, I totally get it. Support your local library, petition the publishing houses and studios to have free with ads options, or at the very least, encourage other people to pay for the official releases. I know times are hard for everyone, but officially localized anime and manga are more affordable today than they've ever been. If fans outside the industry band together with the fans inside, we can improve the quality of localized media, and we can hopefully license some neglected series or underserved demographics. Looking at you, shoujo manga. Learn our names, follow us on social media, look into our social media campaigns and hashtags like Translators in the credits and Translator on the cover. And if you're a passionate fan who has been inspired to learn Japanese, consider joining us.
We don't do this work because it pays well or because we want to be famous. We do it because we love the mediums we work in and because we value and respect the Japanese creators and teams who make the product. But we also do this for a living and are professionals, so we want to be treated as such.
Towards the end of my survey, I asked localizers, how much longer do you see yourself working in loc? And most people said they want to stay in the industry as long as they can. I don't want to gloss over the pain and anger some of my peers are feeling. Some of the localizers I reached out to are bitter and nihilistic and have little hope. But the majority of us don't want to give up on this industry, and we're going to keep fighting to make it better. If the fans join us, support the publishing houses and smaller studios by buying their products and sharing them with others to make the fan base bigger. If the fans recognize localizers as human beings and an integral part of the Japanese art and entertainment they love, and if the fans join us in solidarity when we attempt to improve our working conditions and raise awareness, we can make the localization industry better. We can make anime, manga, games, and light novels better.
Enjoy what you enjoy, share what you enjoy. Don't limit yourself to the most current shows. Dig around, see what came out in the past. Find those obscure shows that nobody talks about and share those with people. Don't let anybody gatekeep you out of the fandom, and try to bring in more fans, newer fans, and maintain contact with older fans. We're a community. And the more we share with each other, the better.
Anime has touched so many lives. Anime has opened people to other cultures, aesthetics, and experiences. Anime has helped nurture friendships, romances, and partnerships. Anime has given people an escape from loneliness, a way to find community. Anime has given people a mirror to see themselves in, a way to connect with their neurodivergence, their queerness. And if you've made it to the end of this video, I suspect anime has touched your life in some way too.
Well, there are so many things I left unsaid in this video, but I have to end it somewhere. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this, all fans inside and outside the industry who shared their stories with me, all YouTubers, artists, and musicians who contributed, all my patrons who helped me receive a wee bit of compensation for the literal hundreds of hours I spent working on this project. I'd like to especially thank my mega patrons, Data Fox, Greg, Henry Roaming, Jacobel, Layfam, Alexei, Cody Spence, Roel, Velos, Brent, and Tony Hoyt. Also, big thanks to my husband for putting up with me being most mostly an absentee wife all summer and for reminding me to take breaks when I was getting frazzled. And most of all, I want to thank the 150 plus localizers who let me survey them, interview them, and trusted me with some very sensitive information. Well, I'm done. Oh my god, I'm done. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna go now and finally watch One Piece.
So you can't call me a fake fan anymore.